We're all guilty. We take whatever we want from the world with no remorse. I'm just taking it one step further. This is hardcore Minecraft, and I plan to survive 100 days as a pillager. Consider following me on Twitch and subscribing so you don't miss out on anything. My 3 goals: 1. Raid every type of village. 2. Unlock a pillager patrol of YouTubers. And 3. Lead my team into victory against the Ender Dragon and beat Minecraft. And now to embark on my path of destruction. Day 1, after looking out across the icy tundra I had spawned in, I grabbed everything from the chest from the pillager outpost, made myself a wooden pickaxe, and this was the first time I didn't have to punch a tree. I got myself 5 cobblestone like I always do. I made myself a stone pickaxe, and then I realized I shouldn't use a sword as a pillager, so I got myself 1 more cobblestone and made myself an axe to use as my main weapon. The next step to surviving was food, so I headed out to find a forest to go hunting in, and when I finally thought I found my first sheep to kill, as I got closer, I realized that it was actually a polar bear. Luckily, there was a forest right behind him, so I spent the rest of day 1 pillaging this forest of all their woodland animals. I returned home in the middle of the night with enough wool to make a bed. Then I went to bed because I had no idea what would attack me. On day 2, it was time to gather some basic materials, so I started a nearby mineshaft and got myself some cobblestone and a little bit of iron. I was able to make a furnace and get some of the food I collected to start cooking. I spent some time chopping down trees, and when I returned home, I wanted to finally make my very own crossbow, but I realized I didn't have enough string, so I went mining until it was dark out and I could hunt down some spiders. After getting the string I needed, I started heading back to my base, and I was surprised when the hostile mobs started to attack me. I was just minding my own business killing rabbits, and these frozen skeletons knocked me down to 2.5 hearts. So while I was healing up, I decided I would need as much protection as possible. I finally crafted myself up a crossbow as well as this shield. I was becoming the most intimidating pillager out there. I didn't want to risk hostile mobs spawning in my base, so I started lighting up the place and took a second to appreciate the peaceful snow falling. Then I went to bed so all the hostile mobs that attacked me would burn to death. While I do have a base and want to expand it, the life of a pillager is more of a nomadic life. We like to travel around, and while we do collect some resources, we most of the time let our weapons do the talking. We really just do the bare necessities we need to survive and let others do the hard work for us. On day 5, I found my very first village, killed the iron golem, and began killing off all the villagers. I grabbed myself a bucket of lava and made sure that the villagers knew that they were being raided. I trapped these guys in their igloo and began running around lighting all the houses on fire. I broke my axe while fighting this villager, so I just pushed him into the flames. After making myself an iron axe, I grabbed a piece of wood from one of the houses because it's going to be important later on in this video. While pillaging, I accidentally set myself on fire, so I frantically started breaking ice trying to get some water to put myself out before I died, but luckily with just 2 hearts left, the fire went out. After burning down most of the village, I went around collecting all the lanterns so I could use it in my own base and not have to make them myself. Could you believe a pillager is capable of this much destruction? This once peaceful village now laid in ruins with no survivors. Wait, hold on 1 second. Okay, now with no remaining survivors. On day 6, I continued exploring for more villages to pillage. I would zoom over long stretches of ice, explored this massive spruce forest, and I saw some flames through the trees, but I was not the one to start the fire. As I got closer, I realized there was a ruined nether portal. I got myself some shiny trinkets and a block of gold. I changed my mind on the gold pants, so I tried trading them with this piglin that must have came through the portal. I love exploring Minecraft so much. There's so many beautiful, unique places to see. On the night of day 8, I decided to set up camp in this valley and cooked all the food that I had peacefully gathered. And on the morning of day 9, I put out my fire and continued my search for another village. And not too much farther away, I found this taiga village. And by day 9, I had already found 2 types of villages to pillage. In one of the first chests that I opened, I found diamond horse armor. After taking everything from the village, I had a bit of a different idea to destroy this village. While I was executing that idea, I found out that phantoms don't care what you are. They'll try to kill you no matter what. But luckily I survived, and by day 11, I had transformed this beautiful harbor village into this broken down, abandoned remnant of civilization. I wanted to make the houses look like they were falling apart, roofs were collapsing, or just totally knocked off its building, some trees destroyed, and the pumpkins to make them look like they're actually thrown into the water. Also, here's a piece of advice. When picking a fight with an iron golem, make sure they can't reach you. There was one thing that I didn't really want to destroy. This was such a cool armory place that I just had to leave it alone. I just took took the armor and threw it on. On day 12, I decided to take a different way home and sailed a boat through this warm ocean right next to an icy tundra. I was excited to see a snowy village render in the distance. I didn't hesitate to start burning everything to the ground. And if you're ever planning to loot a bunch of villages, look for the buildings with the grindstone in front of them. Although they might be occupied, so just get rid of any villagers inside. Then go straight for the chest because these buildings usually have the best loot in the village. I got my very first 2 diamonds from it, and I also found a saddle. Another tip to squander the hopes of the villagers is to jump on their crops. That way the farmers can't replant anything. And before leaving this village, I found myself a new friend. I threw my saddle and diamond horse armor on my new steed and started to light his old pen on fire. Then I quickly realized that that was not a good idea. Luckily my horse didn't die, and I had a bunch of the stolen wheat that I could feed him to get his health back up. Now it was time to ride off into the distance and head back home. I'll be honest, if I saw a pillager roaming through the countryside on a diamond armored horse, I would be a little scared. As I made it back home, I'm sure the other pillagers were pretty impressed with all the loot I had and my new horse. On the morning of day 16, I got my horse a nice little pen for it to stay in and then headed back down into my mine. While trying to get down to diamond level, I almost fell in this lava. Upon further exploration of this cave, I came across this lava pool with some shiny diamonds across the way. With 4 more diamonds to add to my collection, I was one step closer to getting full diamond armor and being able to match my horse. This right here is why you should always check what blocks are underneath your diamonds. I was determined to get all the diamonds that I would need for these 100 days in just one go, so that way I wouldn't have to come down here again. I was a little weary from mining in my last video. By the end of day 22, I had myself a diamond pickaxe and 28 diamonds that I could use to make full diamond armor. It's always so satisfying being able to make diamond armor all in one go. And I made sure to get a few extra diamonds so I could make myself a diamond axe. I took off all my iron armor and donned my fresh set of diamond armor. Although the armor doesn't show on the pillager, and I think it's because they're a little tubby. I knew I wasn't going to be the only pillager in this world, so I got an armor stand to save my old armor for the next pillager who joins my patrol. Sorry, horsey, not you. Day 23, I was interrupted by this enderman while trying to make myself a shovel. Once I had that shovel made, I went outside and started pillaring up with gravel and took a look around at the landscape just to realize that it's not that different from the view from my tower 20 blocks away. Anyway, I definitely wish I had a Fortune 3 shovel at this moment because I was trying to turn all of this gravel into flint. On day 24, it was back to exploring for more villages to conquer. I got into a fight with some more spiders and got to use my shield for the very first time. Soon after, I arrived upon my first plains village. I was excited to find another saddle so each of my YouTuber friends could have a ride. I got a little too used to burning down villages, and I realized that it was way too close to this forest, which normally I wouldn't care too much about burning down, but I did need some dark oak wood to build my base. So I tried my best to stop the fire from spreading. This village had a lot of wheat, so I took some time to collect it all, to kill all the animals around their village, stopped another forest fire, and killed this wandering trader's llamas to get some leads. On the morning of day 26, I hooked my horse up to this pole, crafted some more arrows, killed the wandering trader, and spent the next couple days collecting some dark oak wood. On day 29, I left the village to keep exploring, and I came across this swamp. Getting those leads from a wandering villager gave me the idea to collect some slime while I had the chance, so that way I could make as many leads that I would need. This was my very first time swimming underwater in a swamp at night. It looks so cool. Anyway, after killing a little bit more slime, I spent the next 2 days traveling on home, and I came across this cool looking horse that I decided to take home with me. And after all that walking, we had kind of a close call with this lava pool, but luckily I was able to tame this new horse and get both of them into their pen. After unloading all my things that night, I had an idea to decorate the outpost with the bells that I got from the raided villages. Then I was ready to make myself a second crossbow, but unfortunately one of my fellow pillagers saw me kill a spider. I still got kind of lucky because I didn't have to kill him. And by the night of day 31, I had myself 2 crossbows, which means I could shoot twice as fast. On day 32, I finally felt like I had enough resources to expand my base. So I turned this isolated outpost into this epic pillager encampment. I built a gate tall enough for me to ride my horse right on through. I of course had to set up a place to store all the food and water for the horses, as well as a place for me and the other pillagers to eat at. I built these huge barracks for me and my fellow pillagers to warm up and get some rest. I also added this little map of the area and a place for guards to sit while they watch any prisoners we might have. Any good pillager camp will have a place to build all the weapons and armor we might need, plenty of resources, and a place to practice with our crossbows. Now there was just one more thing to add to my camp, an enchantment table. So I spent the rest of day 38 preparing for my next conquest. I continued to search for plains villages because I thought that they had the most libraries, which meant easy access to bookshelves. Finding 2 villages right next to each other was definitely a bonus. I made my way to the side of the cliff and took a leap of faith and missed the water. Oh, that is so embarrassing. I went straight to the library. It's kind of funny how you need Silk Touch to get bookshelves, but you can't get Silk Touch without bookshelves. So books are the next best thing. Another good thing about collecting all the wheat from the village is that the farmers will actually pay you just to give them their wheat back. I really only needed 1 village to trade with, so as it became nighttime, I went to the other village and started to take everything from them, leaving a path of flames behind me. I love how this guy doesn't even wake up when I set his house on fire. He's just like, I'm fine. And while I was in the middle of burning down houses, I noticed that some mobs were jumping the iron golem, and after he defeated his last enemy, I put him down with a single shot. Feeling confident, I got into a fight with another iron golem, and he was not as injured as the other one, but luckily I was able to kill him before he could catch me. If you thought villagers were annoying before, let me tell you that they are so much more annoying when you are a pillager. You have to run them down and catch them before they'll trade with you. It's especially difficult when you're trying to unlock the right trades. Once I finally got a farmer to buy wheat off of me, I sold as much as I could to get emeralds to buy bookshelves with. I bought a few bookshelves, crafted up a few bookshelves, and after everything I only had 14 bookshelves. Any pro Minecraft player knows that you need 15 to unlock level 30 enchantments. So I tracked down that farmer again, set a bunch of houses on fire on the way back to the library, and bought myself a final bookshelf. Nothing like a long day of shopping and burning down houses. As the moon began to rise, I began practicing with my crossbow. Let me know down in the comments if you can shoot a villager with a crossbow at close range, because it's a lot harder than I thought it'd be. Although what's pretty funny is that I can actually hit a villager from pretty far away, and my short range aim is improving. Day 46, I started making my way back home when I came across this bee's nest. Being the evil pillager that I was, I broke the nest and decided to get more crossbow practice in, and close by was another village. I've never seen a ruined nether portal spawn so close to a village before. After having some more fun with fire, I started heading back to my horse. In my venture to return home, I also came across this desert temple. Amongst other things, I found some enchantment books, a golden apple, and some iron horse armor. And what kind of pillager would I be if I left behind the TNT? On day 48, I made it home, unpacked all my loot, began cooking up all my steak, and placed some more bells at the top of my tower. I had a lot of friends around me, but I needed more. So after making this cool enchantment table setup in the outpost, I spent the next 2 days building this cool pillager statue that I could use to spawn in some YouTuber friends and have my own patrol that I could lead into battle against the dragon. But it is a lot easier said than done. In addition to blocks taken from raided villages, you need to use totems of undying to spawn them in. We would set out to do that soon, but I got a little distracted when this wandering trader showed up. I thought he would be the perfect guy to put in our cage, but my pillager brethren did not agree with me. I tried my best to save my new prisoner to no avail, so I guess this trader will do. And after a little while, I finally got him into the cage. On day 52, I wanted to add one more little touch to my base before spawning in my friends. I gathered up all the snow that I could, crafted all the snow back into layers, and began adding a little bit more textured snow to my base. By day 54, I was happy with how my base turned out. I wanted to make my base look like it was overflowing with snow, like it was pushed off to the sides and even falling off the roof. I thought it definitely made my base look more natural. Unfortunately, the pillager that I captured had despawned, so I made it look like snow had fallen off the roof and broke the cage. Then I grabbed everything I would need for my next adventure and set off into a new direction looking for another village. On day 55, I found this snowy village as well as this villager to sell me some maps. Unfortunately, I had nowhere near enough emeralds, so it was back to what I do best, pillaging. Once I'd gotten some more emeralds from this farmer, I headed back to that snowy village because I'd already started leveling up that villager, although this time he was a little hard to find in the crowd. After buying a bunch of empty maps from this guy, I finally unlocked an ocean monument map. I was so frustrated. I had to go back to my outpost to get the ingredients for compasses, and I also had to get some more emeralds. And I thought 6 ocean monument maps would be enough, but after buying them, he was still really far away from selling me a woodland mansion map. But he would buy some glass panes, so I went to the nearby beach and started collecting sand. While that sand was smelting, I went mining for some more redstone and iron, and finally I unlocked the woodland mansion map. Now it was time to set out for the mansion. The mountains in Minecraft are already so cool, but who else is excited for the update? On day 60, the woodland mansion came into render distance. I always forget how big they are. And I also saw that there was another village right by the woodland mansion. How unfortunate for them. It's cool on horseback, but you move kind of funny as a pillager in third person. Next to the village was a sunken ship that had spawned on land, but after a little while of digging, it was just too much work to bother getting the loot. And when I came back up to the surface, I was greeted by these two phantoms. And I'd say that my crossbow aim is definitely getting better. I spent all my iron on a shovel and a hoe, so it was a bit ironic that I killed this iron golem to use his iron to craft a flint and steel to burn down the very village that he was trying to protect. On day 61, I was ready to brave the woodland mansion. Being a pillager, it was actually a pretty peaceful experience. I just got to enjoy all the cool stuff in there, and the weird stuff in there. I was relieved to see that these tough guys were not going to try to attack me. Finally, I came across the wizard I was looking for, and they actually run incredibly fast. It did not seem normal. When he was distracted looking out the window, I got 2 shots on him, and he was about to spawn in his little ghost friends. So I jumped up on the table and ran at him with my axe, killing him with a single swing and getting a totem of undying. And after interrupting this evil meeting in the last room, I left the mansion and started making my way back home. I really love this space. It looks like it could be added to a future update. On the morning of day 64, it was finally time to spawn in a friend. I went up to my pillager statue and put the remains of an iron golem along with a totem of undying into the chest.
Let's get this party started.
I was so excited to have another pillager accompany me on my adventures. I led Painful into the outpost and got him set up with all my old gear. Then I gave him a little tour of our camp and gave him some food to munch on. Next, I made sure he got a crossbow and some arrows. Then I introduced him to his horse. I found some obsidian in some of the villages I raided, but I needed just a few more blocks to build a nether portal. I was so happy to not have to go into the nether by myself. We built the portal in the basement, lit it, and went through. The place we spawned in at wasn't too bad. I did like that it was high up so you could see all of your surroundings. I don't think I've ever seen a pillager in the nether before. I'm sure all the creatures that call the nether their home were a little confused. We were happy that not a lot of them attacked us, making it a pretty easy search for a fortress. Looking back at it now, Painful was probably a little confused when I told him that we're on the hunt for wither skeletons. Hunting Blaze would have made a lot more sense because it's one of the many steps that you need to take to defeat the dragon, but I had some other priorities. And being the great guy that he is, he didn't question it at all and just went along for the ride. On day 73, we made it back to the nether portal when I realized that I didn't grab any soul sand. Luckily, Painful came to the rescue and he said he grabbed a few just in case. On day 74, we realized the benefit of multiple pillagers. We could split up and raid twice as many villages. On the night of day 75, I beat Painful home and waited for him up in our tower. I think I got more emeralds than he did, but he had the smart idea to buy arrows, and I honestly didn't even think of that. Day 76 and 77, this time we set out on our horses in search for a new type of village. We came across this desert temple, and the only cool things that we found in the chests were gold horse armor and 2 saddles. After I kindly gave Painful the armor and a saddle, he asked me if I grabbed the TNT, which I forgot about. I was just too excited to find a desert village. On day 78, we finally came across one, and while I looted all the chests, I made Painful have to deal with buying another woodland mansion map. And now you may be wondering, if you can't burn down desert villages, then how do you destroy them? Yes, we did just find some TNT, but this is hardcore Minecraft, so we had to destroy this village in a hardcore way. Imagine how terrifying it would be to be living in this peaceful village and 2 pillagers take all your belongings and spawn in a wither. It was so awesome watching the wither destroy the whole village and kill everything in its path. But of course, we didn't want to get killed, so we just hightailed it out of there. The map that Painful bought from the villagers that we just unleashed the wither upon led us to this new pillager outpost where we got into a little fight with these phantoms, and Painful was getting really good with his crossbow. As the sun rose on day 81, not too far past the pillager outpost, we arrived to the next woodland mansion. I excitedly raced past Painful, made my way inside, and we quickly got separated. As I made my way through all the twisted hallways, I thought I saw Painful hiding in one of the rooms, so I went back to look and it just turned out to be a zombie. We did eventually find each other again and trapped ourselves into this creepy meeting room along with an illusioner in that corner. Painful got the first shot on him and I ran in and hit him with my axe. He countered by throwing a vex at me and I ran back at him, finishing him off with one final swing. With another totem of undying in hand, we could spawn in another YouTuber, and as we started heading out of the room, I was surprised none of the other mobs attacked us. We spent the next 2 days traveling home, and as the sun began to set on day 83, we made it back to our compound. We went back into our barracks to get a good night's sleep, and Painful decided decided that he wanted to take up 2 beds. I had no idea how he did that, so I just took the top bunk. On day 84, Painful and I headed on over to the Pillager statue, and I threw in a flint and steel, a totem of undying, and a hay bale that we stole from one of the villages.
Ready to help.
My patrol party was slowly coming together. We got Forrest all the gear and food that he would need, and he was pretty excited to get a crossbow. And now with 2 pillagers protecting me, we headed back into the nether. We spent the next couple of days mining for gold throughout the nether to trade with the piglins. On day 87, since Forrest and Painful have better bartering skills than me, I let them trade with the horde of piglins that we captured. In addition to collecting blaze rods earlier, I also forgot to write down the coordinates of the fortress, which means we had to look for another one. Luckily it wasn't too hard to find, so we made our way into the fortress and I led my team into battle against the Blaze. I think I was a little too confident charging into a spawner room to fight Blaze, and they knocked me down to 2.5 hearts. Luckily Painful and Forrest stopped them from killing me. After getting plenty of blaze rods, we headed back to the portal and had some fun hunting down this ghast. And on the night of day 91, Forrest finally got his first night of sleep. The next morning I let Forrest borrow my horse so he could go in search for one of his own. And while he was doing that, me and Painful headed down into the mine in search of some lapis so we could enchant some of our gear. I was excited to meet up with Painful after a day of mining, having 14 pieces of lapis. But it turns out Painful got more lapis than I did, and he also found diamonds. Luckily, I was able to find some myself, and we both made ourselves some diamond axes, which was actually very helpful because my first one was about to break. Selling villagers back their own crops actually gives you a lot of levels. I got some pretty good enchantments on my weapons, and I enchanted Painful's weapons as well. Now we just needed to unlock the last YouTuber and beat Minecraft. To spawn in the last guy of my pillager patrol, we would need some more totems of undying, and what easier way to get it than a raid. Once Painful and I captured this bannered pillager, we noticed Forrest arriving back home with a brand new horse. We killed this pillager with a banner to get the bad omen effect, and soon after the sun began to rise, so we all hopped on our horses and headed out to find the last type of village we would need to complete my first goal. It was a ton of fun to go exploring with these guys and just riding our horses along the countryside. On day 94, we made our way into the savanna biome and found ourselves the perfect village to spawn in a raid. Things were going pretty smoothly until this guy knocked me down to half of a heart, and if I was by myself, I totally would have died. Luckily, my allies saved me just in time. I'm honestly surprised I didn't use any of the TNT that I found up to this point, and I thought that it would be the perfect tool to fight the Ravengers. We continued to fight off the raid into the night, but I guess all the villagers were killed and we technically lost the battle. But since we're also pillagers, we didn't really care about the villagers, and we got what we came here for. We had ourselves enough totems to spawn in the last YouTuber, so we just started heading on home, and we grabbed this extra horse on the way back. I stayed in the back of the traveling party to make sure the horse got back to our base without coming off the lead. On the morning of day 97, I gathered everything that we would need to spawn in the last YouTuber. I got a totem of undying from Forrest and one from Painful, and I put a building block from each type of village into the chest, along with 4 totems of undying and an emerald block.
Reinforcements have arrived.
I completed my first goal of raiding every type of village. I also completed my second goal of unlocking a pillager patrol of YouTubers, and now all that was left was to defeat the dragon and beat Minecraft. After we got Nestor everything that he would need, we gave him a little tour of the camp, and I went to go give him a lead to his new horse, and I accidentally gave it to Forrest. It was so hard telling everyone apart without their name tags. After that embarrassing moment, we all got on our horses and filed out of the camp. Painful crafted all the eyes of Ender, so we let him lead us to the stronghold. We traveled tirelessly across the landscape in search for the dungeon, and we had become a pretty formidable force. Imagine if you were just building your little starter home and you see these decked out pillagers coming towards you. I would be a little nervous myself. We eventually came to an ocean and had to leave our horses behind, and we struggled just a little bit trying to sail our boats in a formation. We eventually made it to this cool little island, and when Painful threw another eye of of Ender, we were so excited to see it go straight down into the ground. We dug our way down until we found the stronghold, and I told everyone to split up while we're inside so we could quickly loot the stronghold and find the portal. Day 100, we finally found and made our way into the end portal room. I broke the silverfish spawner while Painful put in the eyes of Ender, and now it was time to accomplish my last goal and beat Minecraft. Are you guys ready?
Let's do this. Ready.
Super easy one.
I put the last eye of Ender into the portal, and with all the confidence in the world, we jumped in. While we were making our way from the platform to the surface, the dragon swooped down and tried to scare us off right from the start. Forrest gave me an extra water bucket that he had, and as I was working my way up one of the towers, I think Nestor shot the crystal I was going for. So I jumped down and me and Painful went to the next tower. And this one had iron bars around it, so I actually had a chance to get it. And right when I blew up the crystal, the dragon got me with his poisonous breath. I definitely unlocked some pretty OP YouTubers. Soon all the crystals were destroyed and it was on to the main fight. The sky was filled with our arrows and we easily knocked the dragon's health almost down to 0. With just 2 hits left, everyone else stopped attacking and they let me be the one to finally vanquish the dragon and get the achievement. Then we all ran to get as much experience as we could. And just like that, I completed all my goals and survived 100 days as a pillager in hardcore Minecraft. Special thanks to Painful, Forrest, and Nestor for being in my video. They all make amazing content, so make sure to subscribe to their channels linked in the description. Before I became an evoker, I was just your average villager with an interest in magic. I was treated as an outcast by the others, and eventually they couldn't handle how powerful I was becoming, so I was banished from the village. I found my way to this swamp and met a witch who gave me a potion that she said would fix everything. But when I would wake up the next morning, that would not be the case. This turmoil gave rise to 3 goals that I gave myself 100 days to complete. Number 1, take over and transform a woodland mansion where no one else would bother me. Number 2, raise up an army to destroy my home village. And number 3, exact revenge on the witch who turned me into this monster. My first day as an evoker, I noticed the witch and all of her belongings were gone. Then I noticed I had 2 extra hearts and I didn't understand why the witch would make me a more powerful enemy. I also wasn't used to punching down swamp trees. Once I had some basic tools, I went around killing all the animals I could find. I also grabbed as much sugarcane as I could find because I would need that very soon. And once I had plenty of food, it was about to get dark and I wanted to go mining and got some coal. Then I set my food to cook while I got my first bit of iron as well as grabbed some more coal. Then I nearly had a heart attack when I turned around and I was face to face with the creeper. I forgot I was also a hostile mob. I spent the next few days searching through this cave system and wanted to collect some more coal, iron, and redstone for mostly mischievous deeds, but I also did need armor and compasses to trade. And while I was collecting more redstone, I saw the glisten of diamonds. I wish I was always this lucky in Minecraft. I did nearly fall into lava, but as I mined it, I realized I had stumbled upon an 8 vein of diamonds. Day 5, I came out of the caves and I began searching for a village. I actually managed to find one without having to travel too far. I came across what looked like a start of a forest fire. I tried to put it out but gave up really quickly. I needed to get a map so I could find a woodland mansion a lot more easily. And as I approached the village, I almost fell into another ravine. Yep, that would have definitely hurt. I spent the rest of that night pillaging the village and I lazily looked through the windows for loot in some of the houses. And this is where my luck ran out. Not a single house had a chest, but I did get this potion brew stand at least. The next morning, I trapped as many villagers as I could. That way they'd be all in one place for me to trade with. Then I took a little bit of time to get their workstations ready. I used the sugarcane that I had to make a cartography table. I turned the gravel I got mining into flint to make fletching tables, as well as made a few composters. Now I could sell sticks and wheat for emeralds and spend those emeralds on the cartographer to get a map to a woodland mansion. But unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of wood on me. So on day 7, I crafted up myself a diamond axe and continued to chop down trees to get as many sticks as I could. As the sun began to rise on day 10, my axe got the last good use out of it, and I actually made my way pretty far from the village and stumbled upon another village. So I took all of their wheat, traded it with the local farmer, and headed back to the first village where all my villagers were. It wasn't actually too far away, so I decided to grab all the copper I got from mining, crafted up as many lightning rods as I could, and went back to the village I just looted, then began putting copper rods on their roofs to attract lightning in case they ever have a thunderstorm. See, pillagers would just outright kill and burn everything. Evokers, on the other hand, are a little more subtle, yet a lot more crazy. Unfortunately, the fun was interrupted by these sky rats, so after a little bit of time of trying to fight them off, I just decided to go to bed. As the sun began to rise on day 11, I returned back to my prisoners again, collected all of the wheat that they had there, and I actually got myself a good amount of emeralds from a farmer who managed to evade capture. That's when I realized I should probably stop stock up on food since I was going to be here a little while longer. I took some time to kill all of the village's livestock, as well as all the peaceful woodland animals in the surrounding area. I didn't want to waste any wheat on bread because I knew that I would need every emerald I could get. Also, I was a little sick of eating wheat. On day 12, I set my food to cook and grabbed this melted iron and gold that I left in the furnace while I was chopping down trees. I actually had enough gold to craft up some golden apples. And since I was about out of wheat, I switched out the composters with fletching tables and spent the next 3 days trading away with all the villagers. These few days went by pretty quickly because I had to sleep through the nights, because villagers aren't open 24/7 anymore. Then on day 15, I was finally able to buy a woodland mansion map. But before I decided to go, just to be nice, I wanted to leave all my new prisoners with a way to escape. I found a nearby cave, got a bucket of lava, and arrived back to the villagers with a dispenser in hand. I placed it down through the lava inside and replaced the block with a pressure plate so the villagers could escape. However, whoever tries to leave first would make the lava pour onto all of their friends. And I guess he couldn't live with that guilt. On day 16, it was time to set out to find my brand new home, but it turned out the mansion was a lot farther than I had hoped. I think it ended up being over 10,000 blocks away. I had to travel through many different biomes, as well as brave a storm or two, but on day 19, I finally arrived to the mansion and took this day to look through all the rooms for any loot, but that's when I remembered I had a full inventory. Once I found myself a good room to claim as my own, I dropped my stuff off and went back to looting. The mansion actually had a lot of cool things, including both a melon and pumpkin farm. I also found other people like me, who after talking to them, unfortunately came across that orange witch as well. They really did not want to talk to me about it. For whatever reason, this part of the mansion did not have an entrance, so I had to cut my way in, and had to go through all this extra work to get to a small third floor where all they had up here was 2 giant chickens. On day 20, now that I had found a place to settle down and unloaded all my inventory, I made a diamond pickaxe and some torches and went outside to find a good place to mine. But then I figured it would be actually cooler and easier to just have a mine under my new mansion. I was pretty glad I dug there because I stumbled upon a mine shaft. I found some more gold and my first bit of lapis. I almost broke this spider spawner because I hate cave spiders, but I didn't just in case I wanted to build a spider farm with it. This mine shaft was pretty expansive. Unfortunately, I wasn't as lucky as I initially thought because I couldn't find any chests, but the exploration was more than worth it when I found this cute little axolotl swimming around. I crafted up a bucket with some of the iron I had mined, grabbed some nearby water, and caught this cute little guy. On day 21, I worked my way back to where I came from and continued mining down to diamond level. I was determined to get enough diamonds for at least full diamond armor all in one go. I normally continue mining with a full inventory to get as many diamonds as I can in the least amount of time, and only sometimes storing stuff in chests down in my mine. But I knew that I needed a ton of cobblestone to transform the mansion, so I had to keep making trips back up to the surface. Also, now that deep slate is in the game, it really slows you down a bit because they take twice as long to break. I eventually broke my pickaxe and had to make a new one, and once I got just a few more diamonds, I headed back up to the surface. I think I had mined about 29 diamonds altogether, which was more than enough for a full set of diamond armor. On day 28, I noticed my rations were dwindling, and since I had a big pond right at my front door, I decided to spend that day fishing for some more food. Day 29 and 30, I spent gathering some more dark oak wood to also use to transform the mansion. On day 31, I thought I had the biggest brain idea ever. Here it is. Since you can't mine a bookshelf without silk touch, I figured I could use a single sticky piston with a lever to move some bookshelves around in that library I found earlier. That way I could easily surround an enchanting table without having to craft a single bookshelf. I had everything that I needed to make a piston, I just needed a little bit of slime. So I headed back to that big swamp that I remembered passing through while searching for the mansion. While there, I found another witch hut, but the witch there was no friend of that orange witch. Then she actually offered her help when I mentioned my old village. After that conversation, I spent the night of day 31 killing slime. And quick note, I don't think axolotls will attack slime, although they do look pretty cool in a swamp. When the sun rose on day 32, I headed back to my mansion to test my big brain theory. Day 33, I spent moving around these bookshelves until I had at least 15 surrounding a block where I could put an enchanting table down. Then I needed to actually craft an enchanting table. So I headed back down into my mine and got just enough obsidian to craft an enchanting table and to build a nether portal. So I had the obsidian and I had the diamonds. I just needed one book. I went to go break a bookshelf and it dropped 3 books. Here's where my theory began to break down. I thought I was lucky the first time, but every bookshelf dropped 3 books. So all I had to do was break 15 bookshelves, use less than 2 stacks of wooden planks, and I could have saved myself 3 whole days of work. Let me know how you normally get bookshelves in the comments. I spent day 34 trimming off the bottom part of the roof all the way around the mansion. I quickly learned that I would need a water bucket in my offhand, which definitely saved me more than once. And while I was hard at work, the witch that turned me into an evoker peered at me through the trees below. I jumped down and began chasing her, but as she ran deeper into the forest, I quickly lost her. So I turned back around and headed back toward the mansion. Day 35, I was back to work and added some extra fortification to the walls to better support my new roof. While I was transforming the mansion, I ran out of food and had to grab all the fish that I caught that I forgot that I left in the furnace. Also, these pillagers wanted to talk to me for some reason, and I was a little too busy to talk at that moment, but I would visit them later on. And by day 40, the mansion was starting to look much more fortified and intimidating. I added a lot of cobblestone as well as watchtowers to all the corners of the roof, along with a slightly wider watchtower right above the main entrance to make it easier to find. And my favorite part was the third story additions. I wanted to expand that roof to make it a perfect rectangle, so I added some pillars to hold it up. I really forgot how expansive mansions can be. On day 41, I tried to better map out the mansion to make it a little easier to navigate, and I added this new way to access the roof. I figured out that by adding a doorway here, I would have direct access to my enchanting table room, plus I could take the stairs up and they could lead me right to the roof. And the next morning, I decided to embrace the fact that there were random builds inside of the mansions, so I used this chicken as a way to the top of my base. Also, this might be my first time ever using diorite in a build. And want to know the best part? Matching chickens means matching ways up and down. Yeah, this is one instance where having giant windows probably is not a good thing, but they normally are pretty good to have, especially when it helps you find another hidden room. If you ever find this in a mansion, make sure to check inside. Have you ever heard of the goose that lays golden eggs? Well, this is much better. Diamonds! Another thing I learned about being an evoker, Vindicators make terrible roommates. They never sleep, and it's just a constant stream of argumentative grunts. They also have no sense of personal space. Plus, they invite friends over who don't have the best reputations. On day 43, I began searching for a desert temple to hopefully find a saddle and make traveling a lot easier. I eventually found a desert and was fortunate to see a temple in the distance. I of course wanted the TNT, but there was no saddle. Although it's hard to complain about not getting a saddle with finding diamond horse armor, an enchanted golden apple, and a silk touch book, which I could have used like 10 days ago. Also, in my travels, I found this village, but they didn't have the building that would have had a saddle. Fortunately, they did have a zombie horde rampaging through the night. So, being the evil gentleman I was, I proceeded to chop down all the doors in the village. It was kind of like when the lid to a jar of food is stuck, so you get a friend to help you open it. And then I took all of their wheat and climbed the tower to see what was all around. And that's when I saw another desert temple sticking out of the ground. I felt like living life on the edge, so I jumped off the tower and MLG landed on a nearby building. Then I also water bucketed into the temple. I felt brave, but I was not going to be dumb, so I mined down to the loot. I did not want to risk setting off the 9 TNT that would await my timely arrival. And this is where I found not one, but 2 saddles. The next morning, I found a horse and headed back to my mansion. On day 47, it was time for another trip. With the empty maps I got from the cartographer, who fell in lava or something, in hand, I headed back to my horse and began traveling back to my home village. This trip was much easier on horseback. This time, I went for 2 reasons. Number 1, to scout it out before the attack, so I chose to stop in a cave on the way and went searching for everything I'd need to make a spyglass. And the second reason was to map out the area to give to the army I was about to band together. That way they could all meet me there, and we could all raid the village together. I tested out a spyglass on a nearby goat, and then began checking out the village's defenses. Since I was last there, it looked like they hired a wandering hero who brought a lot of strong help with him. Exacting revenge on my hometown was gonna be a little harder than I expected. Once I got what I came for, I headed back to the mansion. I spent day 51 and 52 building some bridges at the entrance of my mansion, leading in all directions. And to the right is a really crowded forest, so I made a staircase so I could easily stride amongst the treetops. I also added one more important feature, a little home for my horse. I tried my best to keep it looking like a vanilla style build, and it was pretty refreshing to build with cobblestone because it's so easy to get. With the entrance complete and my woodland mansion transformed, my first goal was finished, and it was time to start planning out the attack on my home village. On day 53, I began hunting down some more food on my way to a nearby village, and while I was at the village, I saw the witch again, but she quickly vanished. I wanted to set up a trading system to get some better enchanted books, so I captured 2 villagers, and I wish I had a plethora of iron to minecart their way to captivity, but I had to make do with some boats. When we finally did make it back to the mansion, I set up this villager breeder, and now my fort could have some proper prisoners for me to trade with. On day 56, I finally remembered to enchant some of my gear. Then I built a portal to the nether and went in search for a fortress. And I spent day 58 collecting blaze rods for potions. By the end of day 59, I made it back to my portal and was back in the overworld. On day 60, Day60, I began brewing some potions and captured some new test subjects to practice my magic on. I caught this little chicken, a small creature, a pig, a somewhat medium-sized creature, and a cow, one of the bigger creatures to roam the nearby lands. I honestly didn't know the extent of my magic powers or what my potions would do, and after I threw the magical potions upon these helpless animals, I slept soundly through the night. I woke up the next morning and collected some iron to add some lanterns around my build, and when I went to go check on my test subjects, the chicken transformed into this weird ghost thing that really seemed to like me. I think I'll call it a Vex. The pig was just a violent deformed mess, and the cow was missing, and there was a huge hole in the wall. I soon found what I created, and it chased me around the mansion until he backed me into a corner. It doesn't look too big in this giant mansion, but when it's right in your face, it's absolutely terrifying. So I started throwing random things to it, and it seemed to have a taste for wood and iron. This ravenous creature would be perfect to attack the village with. I decided to call it a Ravager. The next day, I took some time to capture some more cows and turn them into Ravengers, and I made a more potent potion, so there was an instant change, which was a little unfortunate for the Vindicator who got stuck inside with them. Then I tried making a potion to make the creatures a bit smarter to have a better tactical advantage. I found the first Ravager I made chasing the Vex around the room, so I threw potions at both of them, and even I was surprised by the results.
Why did you turn us into these creatures?
I think it's kind of nice, actually.
Well, at least you can fly.
You look like you could easily destroy anything in your path.
I am feeling pretty strong. And I did knock down that wall earlier pretty easily.
I wasn't expecting them to become smart enough to talk. That part made kind of sense, but I honestly don't know what caused them to get those accents. But the three of us were quickly becoming friends. And now it was time to prepare to fight. We all had to hone our skills before the battle. In fact, I think this is the perfect time for an inspirational training montage. Let's cue the music. By the end of day 65, we were all ready to battle. Day 66, I gave some maps to my Vindicators, told them to stop by the swamp and recruit the witches on the way to the village, as well as bring the Ravengers along with them. I also made them have an encampment set up before I arrived. My army was almost complete. If I wanted to win this battle, I knew that I would need to recruit the Pillagers for help. I found the biggest Pillager outpost I had ever seen and asked the guards at the entrance if I could talk to the chieftain. I was definitely not too welcomed here, and this Pillager said if I wanted help, I'd need to fight the chieftain, who came out of the Pillager tower and said that I would have to fight him for leadership over the Pillagers. We went out the gate of the outpost, he placed down his flag and said that I would have to duel him to the death if I wanted to lead his soldiers into battle. We began circling each other and soon the duel commenced. Luckily, I had my Vex with me and we continued to battle the chieftain together. Finally, after a grueling duel, I became the victor and the new Pillager chieftain. So I picked up the banner and brought it before the Pillagers. They said that they would fight by my side and destroy the village with me. On day 68, the Vex and I met back up with our Ravager friend and began traveling to the village. Ravagers are definitely not meant to travel long distances. They are much more deadly sprinting short distances, and there's nothing quite like watching a wizard ride a white horse along the countryside. On the night of day 69, we arrived back to the village and spotted the Vindicator's camp up on the mountain. We made our way up, I parked my horse outside, and took command of the operation. Later into the night, all my reinforcements began to arrive. The Pillagers got there first, and they were itching for a fight. Then the witches got there and had plenty of potions to throw at the villagers, and to my surprise, even the other evokers came to fight. I knew that the battle in the morning would be epic. As the sun began to dawn on day 70, I rallied my troops as we prepared to launch our attack. I jumped down into the water, and as the first wave moved into the village, all the villagers began to panic. I quite literally fanned the flames of the battle by lighting houses on fire as the Golem and Hero attempted to fight off my Pillager troops. Iron Golems began closing in on me, the fire was spreading, and I could hear the sound of Ravager footsteps behind me. It was pure chaos, and I loved every second of it. The Wandering Hero was a formidable foe. I watched as he chopped down a fellow evoker, and then got chased off by a swarm of Vexes. And that wasn't the only thing that chased him down. Eventually, my forces were too overwhelming for one valiant knight to handle, and we managed to kill the Wandering Hero. And that's the story of the very first raid in Minecraft. After that battle, Wandering Heroes were disgraced, and had had to turn to trading just to get by. But the story doesn't end there. We still have one more goal to accomplish, so we headed on home. Through a lot of trial and error and chasing down escapees, I managed to get these villagers into place to sell me some books. But I didn't have much emeralds, so I made myself a diamond pickaxe and spent the next few days collecting wood to turn into emeralds. On day 79, I turned these villagers into Fletchers and got plenty of emeralds from them and sold all the wheat that I had to the farmer in charge of making more villagers. I started to head up to my library when I noticed an iron golem had spawned, the one setback to having villagers as prisoners. Once I got to my library, I went to the back and broke down some bookshelves so I could use the books to buy enchanted books. Then I spent way too long repeating this process and trying to get the right enchanted books to trade from the villagers, as well as selling all the sticks that I had. But eventually I had a full room of villagers and a lot of good enchantments. I knew that all the effort would pay off when I faced the witch. Next, I looked around the mansion for this room with an anvil, and the first thing I did was get the Bane of Arthropods off my sword. Then I proceeded to make my sword OP, and I saw I was quickly running out of levels, so I decided to upgrade the rest of my gear a little bit. And since I needed more levels, what better way than mining quartz? And there's a cat in the nether. You know, maybe having villagers in the mansion wasn't the best idea. Soon enough, I had some really well enchanted armor, and it was just in time too. On day 93, an evoker came to tell me he spotted the orange witch on horseback, galloping across the treetops. Time to get my revenge.
Good luck.
Wait, I'm coming with you.
Sure enough, we found the witch on top of nearby trees and the chase began. This could only happen in Minecraft. The witch led me through different biomes and I managed to keep up with her for 2 full days. And my little Vex buddy stuck close by my side the whole time. I was so focused on killing the witch, I was not watching where I was going. And I rode my horse right into a cave. But I was okay and kept up the pursuit. As the dawn of day 95 began to break on the horizon, the witch ditched her horse and jumped down a hole in the ground lit up by end rods. We followed her down and ended up in a stronghold. Then we tried our best to chase her through this labyrinth. I definitely enjoyed the horse chase more than this part. Day 96, we found the witch waiting for us in the portal room with the portal already lit, and she jumped through. As we approached the center of the main end island, the witch awaited us with an end crystal in hand. She placed it down and we were a bit stunned as the pillars began to regenerate. We chased her to the gateway, but she managed to escape our grasp. It didn't feel right leaving the dragon behind to rule, so it was time for a fight. I gave a bow to my Vex and had him take out all the towers. Then it was time to take down the dragon's health, which was fairly challenging. And when it came down to the last second, my Vex flew straight into the dragon, sacrificing himself to save me. It was a bittersweet victory. I spent the next 2 days searching through the end dimension for the witch and headed east because that was really the only way I could go. And on day 99, I found this end city and followed this endstone bridge to the ship. I ran past these endermen and was greeted with a potion to the face. She had nowhere to run and I hit her off into the void. But it felt off, like it was too easy. I killed the one who turned me into an evoker, but I lost a friend in the process. I made my way to a gateway and jumped through the portal and found my Ravager friend on the roof with a makeshift hay bed, and I told him everything that happened. But after he asked me how a ghost could die, I focused all my magic together and respawned my Vex. A happy ending. Well, at least for me, maybe not the villagers. And that's why I survived 100 days as an evoker in hardcore Minecraft. Thanks to Lockdown Life and Gamers for helping me make this video. Vindicators are known for running headfirst into battle with an explosive power behind each hit. These Dark Knights faithfully serve the evil wizards that rule their land. However, our kingdom is under attack. A new portal has appeared, unleashing redstone monsters upon the world and opposing the Arch Evoker's rule. Will I be able to take out this redstone invasion and find out why they are here? What other creatures will come out of the portal? It seems an evil red witch commands this powerful force and must be stopped before it's too late. This is my chance to finally prove myself and become a royal guard. And it looks like my first quest is to stop these redstone goblins from taking over our fortress. Then I can find their portal and destroy it. I'm gonna need all the help I can get, so subscribe to join our ranks. Now I have 100 days as a Vindicator to save the world. Day 1, I spawned in a fortified mansion and a redstone goblin snuck up on me. I turned around, punched him away, and ran for the door. I didn't have anything on me, so I ran for the forest and began gathering wood. I quickly crafted an axe and went back to protect the mansion. The goblin was joined by a few of his friends and they all came toward me at once. I tried my best to fight them off, and when I got inside, I went to this mined out area to grab a few cobblestone. After getting a better axe, I ran around the mansion killing off all the intruders. Then I let the mansion's pet ravagers loose and they definitely helped turn the tide. I also saved this royal royal guard from perishing, but I got a bit too confident and this horde knocked me down to 2.5 hearts. Luckily, I climbed up this gross chicken and the general of our forces came down from the roof and used his powerful crossbow to kill all the goblins chasing me.
Good job out there, rookie.
Thanks.
Sweep through the mansion for any stragglers and meet me on the roof tomorrow, bright and early for your first mission.
You got it. It took a while to check every room in the mansion. There was not much to find, so I got some rest and the next morning I met the general on the roof.
I heard you want to prove yourself and become a royal guard.
More than anything, sir.
There are some villagers causing unrest in a nearby village. We can't fight off this redstone invasion with talks of rebellion amongst the villagers. The Arch Evoker wants someone to go out there to show them that he still rules these lands. If you can handle this, I will have some more missions for you. Good luck.
He gave me a cool helmet and sent me on my way. As I began to leave the mansion and head toward the village, I realized I was very underprepared. I collected some more wood and went down to this nearby cave for iron. While I was mining some coal, this weird redstone cube thing startled me. It was pretty aggressive, and you'll see later on how scary these things are in swarms. Just one of them managed to knock my health down lower than what I was comfortable with. I had to put mining on pause and went to go look for some food. I didn't need too much since I was heading towards the village. And that night I had a nice snack and a full set of armor. I must admit this helmet looks pretty good on me. I spent days 3 and 4 traveling to the nearby village that was causing problems. They were reported for illegally spawning in iron golems, building up defenses, and storing extra food. On day 5, when I arrived at the village, I immediately killed their iron golems. I then noticed the Illager guards sent here were missing. That's when one of those wanderers came out and tried to attack me. We began to fight, but I guess the village didn't pay him enough because he ran off before we could finish our duel. I let them keep the extra defenses in case the redstone army marched through here, but I did take their extra wheat. The next day, I began traveling back to the mansion, and that's when I noticed the wandering trader I fought previously who ran into some redstone mobs. After enjoying the show for a little while, I figured I better head back before I get in trouble for taking too long, and I luckily didn't run into anything else on my way home. On the night of day 8, I returned to the mansion and reported back to the general. Everything is taken care of, sir.
Did you run into any problems?
Just one. A wandering trader who tried to be a hero, but I scared him off.
The Arch Evoker has dealt with your kind before. No need to consider him a threat. I have a bit of a new job for you. After what happened to the last mansion you served in.
Which was the chicken's fault more than my own, sir.
We think it's best you build a jail that can't burn down easily for any prisoners we capture in this war. We don't really have resources to spare, so you're on your own with that. But trust me, this will be a big step toward your promotion.
Right away, sir. I went to sleep in a new room in the mansion that night, and now I get why some of the beds are so big. The next day, I searched the surrounding area for a good place to build a prison. I found a nice spot in the nearby mountains to build, and it was not too far away from the mansion. I'm pretty sure these were once training grounds because of this armor stand that was left out here. Anyway, I set up a little temporary camp and unloaded all my extra things. Then I spent days 10 through 12 mining and collected a lot of cobblestone and andesite for my build. I also gathered more iron to fortify the jail cells, coal to smelt everything, and diamonds when I got lucky. I upgraded my pickaxe the first chance I got and was eventually able to craft a nice diamond axe too. With some new tools and 6 extra diamonds, I headed back up to the surface on the night of day 12. Day 13, I scouted out more of the surrounding area while I waited for my iron and cobblestone to smelt. While exploring, I came across a few stray redstone cubes, and they are much faster than they look. And it's pretty scary how much damage they can deal. But before I could kill them all, a Mountaineer randomly appeared, striking them down and saving me. He had a really cool looking weapon, but he was a bit mysterious and wandered away before I could talk to him. The Mountain Illagers generally keep to themselves and don't like being told what to do. They are pretty tough adversaries, so the Arch Evoker usually just leaves them be. I just carried on with what I was doing and spent the next few days collecting dark oak wood and contemplating the interaction with that Mountaineer. They are not generally ones to interfere with other Illager matters. Day 17, I was back at my little encampment, organizing my things, when a Vindicator foot soldier showed up with new orders from the general. He wanted me to clear out a redstone guarded temple and get the TNT inside before they could. So I began traveling to the desert in search for the temple when I found a nearby village that was wiped out. The redstone monsters had definitely been through here. Day 19, I found the temple and there was a redstone golem out front. I did not want to try to face it yet with just iron armor on, so I waited until night, snuck around the back, and took out the goblins inside. Next, I dug down to the loot room, disarmed the trap, and found some pretty good loot inside. Then I made my way back to the surface, but the redstone golem had broken inside the temple. I quickly ran for an exit and escaped before he was able to get me. I spent the following 2 days traveling back home with the TNT and my heart still racing. As the sun glistened across the horizon on day 22, I made it back to the mansion and gave the general the TNT.
Perfect timing. The Arch Evoker has made a new batch of potions to make his soldiers bigger and stronger.
Is it safe?
Oh yeah, when I first met our ruler, I was just an average pillager. Soon after our pillager chieftain went missing, an evoker showed up and killed our replacement chieftain. Then we were honor bound to serve the evoker. After he returned from a wild witch chase, he became a little paranoid. So he made these potions for us, and then he proceeded to conquer these lands, establishing his power with his even stronger army.
That is awesome.
Now drink this and get back to work.
I drank the potion and immediately my insides started to burn. Then I could feel my muscles stretch as the potion coursed through my veins. And when I looked up, I was now the same size as the general. Luckily, my armor grew too. I felt much stronger and I had a lot more hearts now. I headed back to my camp and decided to go mining again for some diamonds to upgrade my gear. I spent the next several days underground. I should have definitely done this before drinking the potion because I could no longer fit in a 2-block space. I eventually had to just switch to searching through the caves for diamonds, and by the night of day 27, I had mined 22 more diamonds. I figured that plus the leftover from last time should be enough to craft some new armor. I did, however, decide to keep my cool looking helmet for now though to save some diamonds. Day 28, I thought I had enough resources to knock out to this jail build, so I plotted it out and realized that I would need some gray wool to complete it. So I traveled around looking for gray sheep to no avail. I had to kill a skeleton and a squid to get dye to make gray wool. Then I finally had everything I needed, but on my way back to the camp, I came across a gray sheep. The first thing I decided to build was the guard barracks. That way, I would have a nice place to sleep, and the guards could deploy out here at any time. I wanted to match the style of the mansion, but make it look a bit stronger and durable as requested. Now that the guards have a place to stay, I thought they would probably want some food too. Day 32, I began hunting down some different animals and realized that wouldn't last too long, so I decided to lure some sheep back to the barracks to farm them for mutton. Day 33, we all made it back to their new home, and I definitely should have gotten leads for this. After I put them in a nice little pen, I went to sleep through the night. The next 2 days were spent constructing these fortified walls to enclose any prisoners and give them no hope for escape. On day 36, a patrol party of pillagers showed up with another mission. We were supposed to scout out the region looking for the rumored portal that the Redstone invasion was coming from. During our travels, we reached a pillager outpost that was taken over and swarming with redstone monsters. And I'm pretty sure this was the same golem I ran into at the desert temple. It looked like they locked some pillagers in their own cage, so the pillager captain sent his 2 men to try to go sneak up and free the captured pillagers. But the redstone golem spotted them, and before we could do anything, the pillagers were killed. Soon the golem spotted us and began moving toward us. After the pillager captain told me to report this to the general, he charged toward the golem, giving me just enough time to escape. Days 40 and 41, I was traveling back to the mansion, but when I made it to the prison, I realized it wasn't finished yet. That would be too much bad news to give it once. So I spent the next 2 days constructing this tower to overlook the compound, and it was tall enough to spot any escapees or incoming attacks from far away. Then I took a few more days adding in the most important part, the prison cells. I built several small cells and one big cell big enough to house a redstone golem just in case. I also constructed a hanging cage for any prisoners that I don't really like. Day 47, I finished adding the last details to my build, and it was time to report back to the general. I was a little nervous to report back after everything that happened.
I'm impressed. You made it back in one piece.
I'm the only one that made it back.
Our forces are spread too thin. I told the Arch Evoker we needed more soldiers to accomplish that mission. What took so long to get back here?
I wanted to return with at least some good news. I finished building the prison.
Good thinking, he'll be pleased. Now go to these coordinates, search through the dungeons looking for anything that could turn the tide to this war. Don't go through any portals, and grab the armored horses in the field on your way back.
Yes, sir. The meeting actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. He does understand the cost of war and wants to end this fight as quickly as possible. After the meeting, he sent me back to the prison with some soldiers, and I gave him a tour of their new assignment. Then, after getting a good night's rest, I set out in search of the stronghold the general wanted me to explore. I was really glad that I was tasked with getting horses because all this walking around was getting pretty tiresome. I eventually arrived to the coordinates I was given and found the horses, but there were 2 goblins protecting what looked like an entrance. After killing them, I took a leap of faith and landed into a small little bath of water. I spent days 51 and 52 exploring the stronghold for any special magical items, or at least something of use. While I was down there, I made a wrong turn and got swarmed with cubes. Remember when I said these were terrifying as a swarm? I did manage to escape, but they trapped me in. So I searched this last room and found this weird looking book. The words didn't make too much sense, but I suspected the Arch Evoker might know what they mean. There was no other way out, so I went back to the swarm and hoped whatever I found would work. I read the first incantation as best as I could, and all the cubes began to float. I ran right under them and back to the way I came in. I did have to pillar back up to the surface, but then I got on the horse, attached a lead to the other one, and started the journey home. It took only 2 days to get back home by horseback. I put the horses in the stable outside the mansion and headed on in to get some rest. In the morning, I went to give the book back to the general.
You're doing a great job. Now I sent out some scouts to search the surrounding areas for the portal the redstone monsters are coming from. All but one scout reported back on time. I need you to find him or whatever killed him.
He sent me down to the armory to get a better axe because he didn't know what I'd face. And after waiting a little while, the mansion's blacksmith gave me a heavier, sharper axe than I have ever used before. Day 56, the general let me use one of the horses I brought back. Apparently, the other horse was the Arch Evoker steed. While I was out exploring, I found a crossbow and orders for a scout. I continued to explore the area, and that's when I saw the Red Witch, the leader of the Redstone invasion. She was standing with the other Redstone Golem that came through the portal. This one seemed to stay close to her side. Then, something I was not expecting happened. She took out this giant staff, shot it at the golem, but it didn't hurt it. Instead, it transformed into an egg. She proceeded to scoop up the egg and go through the portal. I waited a minute and decided to follow her through. I spent day 59 following her through the nether until we reached a fortress. On day 60, she respawned the Redstone Golem and made it fight the wither skeletons and blaze there, like it was preparing for a fight or something. Then she also shot her staff at her new victims, turning them also into eggs and collecting them. I was so confused, but I had seen enough. As I was riding back to the mansion to report this, I recognized one area I rode through before. I was close to the Pillager outpost that was captured. I decided to spy on it and saw that the Redstone Golem was gone. So I ran in, killed everything there. Once all the hostiles were taken care of, I released the pillagers and let them get back to manning their posts while I continued on home. The morning of day 64, I met again with the general.
Any luck?
Kind of.
I see.
After I told him about what had happened, he told me to keep the crossbow and gave me some arrows. Then he told me to build a sparring arena to train a batch of new recruits. So I built a nice fighting ring out of some leftover resources I had from building the prison. I took the next 2 days to spar with different recruits and show them the ropes. I also made them do this parkour thing because I thought it'd be pretty funny. But on day 67, the training was interrupted by the mansion chef. He was an angry and older Illager with a big appetite. While there seemed to be more important things at hand, he was persistent and a little scary. He heard I was good at getting things, so he tasked me with stealing some spicy mushrooms from a village. I sailed until I reached the village he spoke of. It was a very beautiful place, except for one house that was blown up randomly. Anyway, I searched through the village and found the local butcher was the one with spicy mushrooms. He seemed pretty stacked with emeralds, so his food must be pretty good. After a little bit of convincing, he gave up the mushrooms, so I sailed home and the chef rewarded me with spicy mushroom stew. The next day, the general found me and he had a serious look on his face.
We found the other golem. They're setting up a base in the redstone mines. Shocking, I know. I can't spare any reinforcements right now. You think you can take out this golem on your own?
I can try.
I think you might need some better armor first.
I finally got a promotion and achieved the lifelong goal of becoming a royal guard of the Arch Evoker. I felt so powerful, and you have to admit my armor looks pretty amazing. Then the general gave me some night vision potions and some health potions as a gift from the Arch Evoker. He also gave me one of the TNT I gave him along with a flint and steel. The blacksmith gave me a few more crossbows and I went on my way. I was a bit concerned because the redstone mines were pretty close to the mansion. It only took 1 day on horseback to get there. As the sun rose on day 71, I reached the mine and there was a few goblins outside that I smited, or is it smote? I killed them with ease. And then I made my way into the mine. It was very dark and creepy, with only a redstone golem standing before me. I presumed it was the one who killed my pillager patrol, so now it was time for revenge. I threw down a night vision potion and began circling the golem. I quickly took out one crossbow at a time, firing them all in a barrage toward the golem's direction. He moved closer to me and spawned these redstone blocks everywhere. I got a little too close to one and it blew up, doing a lot of damage. So I threw down a health potion and ran in with my axe. He really packed a punch, which would be expected from a giant rocky monster. So I retreated back a little bit to shoot off some more arrows, but he spawned more redstone mines. I had to keep running around, landing a hit whenever I could, until finally he toppled over, defeated. I definitely would have died if I had tried to face him the first time we met. After I had cooled down some, I searched through the barrels in the mine and found redstone dust. I honestly didn't know what I expected, but in one chest I found this cursed axe. It looked so cool and went perfect with my royal armor. Day 72, I was traveling back home and came across some redstone soldiers, so I tested out my new axe, and it makes your enemy explode when you defeat them. This would have been so useful in so many circumstances I faced, but I was just happy to have it now, and there was a lot more fighting to do. We needed to stop the witch and her other redstone golem before they could carry out whatever they were planning. On day 73, I told the general I completed the quest, and he seemed a bit surprised to see me.
Man, you've become quite the valuable soldier. The Arch Evoker has granted you some land to build on. Take some time to rest and settle down there. And when we find the portal, I'll be sending for you.
The general let me keep the horse I got a few weeks ago, and I took the rest of that day gathering the leftover resources from building the prison and bringing them to where my new home would be. I spent day 74 gathering wheat seeds. I wanted my land to be a more peaceful place, so what better thing to have than a little farm? The next day, I planted all the seeds I collected and began making the blueprints to my new house. Since I was about all out of wood, I collected just enough to construct my house, and then I spent a few days building this quaint little place to call home. Now that I had a place of my own to protect, I wanted this invasion stopped now more than ever. I decided to spend the next several days looking for the portal and for any redstone mobs to kill. I came across what looked like a battle that was about to be over. Some Illager soldiers were pinned down and were in need of my assistance. I ran in, killing everything with my powerful new axe. This was the best weapon I've ever had. And after a mighty battle, my fellow comrades were saved, and I began my journey back home, with not much luck finding the portal. But on day 84, when I made it back to my quaint little farmland, I was greeted by another royal guard. He informed me that a scout finally found the red portal, and it was beginning to infect our land. So I got on my horse and began riding toward the coordinates to the portal. On day 88, I made it to the portal, and the place was swarming with redstone mobs. I did not see any of my fellow soldiers waiting to attack, so right when I was about to charge the portal on my own, I heard a familiar voice.
Reinforcements have arrived.
I turned around and saw the general standing there with a Ravager at his side.
I'm so ready for a fight.
Is that a talking Ravager?
Yes, I'm actually a personal friend of the Arch Evoker.
Okay, well, I'm glad you could help. The Ravager and I ran into battle, killing everything in our path, while the general got to the high ground and shot his crossbow at his targets below. When the dust settled and we were the only ones standing, I broke the portal, closing the rift between dimensions.
We did it! Redstone actually tastes better than I thought it would.
Okay, buddy, head back to base. And you, follow me. We found the witch.
The general and I rode our horses toward the nether portal I saw the witch go through, and on the way, he explained how we would get through the nether, as well as what she was trying to do. He sent 2 of his scouts to find and spy on the witch, and they followed her to this giant gate deep in the nether that she and her other golem were trying to open. But when we finally did make it to the portal, we were ambushed, and the general tried his best to draw their attention.
Go through the portal and stop her.
I obeyed and watched him get swarmed by the horde as I teleported into the nether, not knowing what would happen to him. It took a few days of traveling through the nether to reach the gate. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. I could barely fight the other golem, let alone a powerful witch who could turn me into an egg. But on day 95, I reached the gate, and the witch seemed preoccupied, but the golem was on guard. I think the witch saw me while I was preparing my crossbows because she ran and hid. Now I felt like I had a chance, but there was not much room to outmaneuver the golem. As I got closer, a Vex came flying out of nowhere and started to attack the golem. So I ran in and we faced the golem together. There were some close calls, but we were able to wear him down and finally defeat him. And that's when the witch returned carrying an egg. Who knows what kind of army she had stored away. Luckily, before we could find out, the Arch Evoker appeared and used the book I found in the stronghold to make her levitate into the air. Then he shot a powerful beam of magic at her, pushing her over the lava, and she fell in once the spell wore off. I stood there in amazement as the Arch Evoker walked off and his Vex flew up to me.
You did good out there. The Arch Evoker wants me to give you this.
His Vex gave me a redstone golem egg and also told me the prison I built was already being used, and that the Arch Evoker wanted me to be the warden. I excitedly ran back toward the portal I came through, and when I got back to the overworld, there was nothing around but the general's helmet. So I got on my horse and started riding back toward the prison. There were a lot of losses on both sides of the fight, but I was just glad it was over. On day 100, I made it back to the prison and took a look around. I put the redstone golem egg in the big prison and went to go rest in the barracks. I was happily surprised when I got to the door.
What? You thought I'd get killed? Nah, it's gonna take a lot more to defeat me.
And that's how I survived 100 days as a Vindicator. Thanks to X Nestorio, Lockdown Life, and Gamers for helping me make this video. Villagers are beginning to rebel against the Arch Evoker's rule, and it seems someone helped his prisoners escape. So the Arch Evoker has summoned me from the void to put a stop to this madness. Make sure to like, subscribe, and watch to the end to see what cool powers I unlock and how this chaos spreads into the nether. Now here's 100 days as an Illusioner in hardcore Minecraft. Day 1, the Arch Evoker welcomed me to his plane of existence before immediately leaving the room and telling me to follow. He left his mansion and made our way to a nearby prison that looked like it had seen better days. Then he introduced me to his general and warden before going off to tend to other matters, leaving me under the general's command.
Yes, the spell worked. I've only heard stories of your existence, but now here you are.
This world feels so familiar, yet I feel so strange strange being here. Why is that?
You are the rumored Illusioner, a stealthy wizard with powerful magic. Legend has it, the creators assigned you, but left you in the void for some reason. Now though, we needed your help, so the Arch Evoker summoned you from the void.
Magic? Void? Wait, help with what?
The Arch Evoker's rule is being challenged by some rebellious villagers who we think caused a Redstone Golem to escape. We need you to track it down and defeat it. Then you can help fight the rebellion.
Sounds like some exciting adventures. I'm always happy to help Illager kind.
Take a few days to get some materials and test out your abilities. Then meet me back here with the warden to begin your investigation.
After speaking with the general, I left the prison and began to explore this beautiful world that I was summoned into. I figured I should start by collecting some wood, so I traveled to the outskirts of the forest as to not mess with the landscape near the mansion. After spending some time collecting wood, I fashioned together a sword and went on the hunt for food for the rest of the day. I was trying my best to adjust to this physical realm and deal with an unsettling hunger, something I've never had to deal with in the void. Day 2 was mostly spent getting used to my new surroundings, exploring the nearby lands, and trying to connect with the other Illagers. However, I had a feeling they did not like me or something. I'm not sure why they weren't too welcoming, although I did get along with the Arch Evoker's pets. I spent the night of day 2 into day 3 exploring the nearby caves to upgrade my gear. I mined plenty of iron. Once I got myself some better tools and armor, I used my illusion magic to conceal what I was wearing. As the sun was getting close to setting on day 3, I exited the caves and ran into a small group of what the Illager folk called Mountaineers. They fired arrows at me with their crossbows, so I ran into the nearby forest and quickly summoned an illusion of myself closer to them, which they happily turned their attention to, thinking it was me. Once they had defeated my illusion, they started to leave, so I headed back to the mansion, unsure why they would attack a fellow Illager. On day 4, I decided I was ready to investigate inside and around the prison. The destruction that had occurred when the Redstone Golem escaped was pretty obvious, but I was not sure why he didn't escape sooner. That's until I looked inside his cage and saw strange growing crystals. Someone managed to slip past the guards and give it these crystals, but the guards didn't want to talk to me about it. They seemed pretty terrified over the whole ordeal. So I started to head toward the direction they said the Redstone Golem went, but had little luck. Since it was getting dark, I headed back to the mansion to report to the general. At the start of day 5, I was told by the other Illagers that the general had a task for me. After a bit of wandering around, I eventually found him commanding a small group of Illagers to start doing repairs around the prison.
Oh good, I was just about to send for you.
Sorry, I got turned around.
In addition to the prison escape, someone also stole a powerful staff from us that my Pillager captains picked up from a jungle witch. We need to find whoever did all this, but for now, I have been handed a different mission for you to complete. The Arch Evoker said it suited your particular talents.
What's the mission?
We want you to observe a nearby village as a target for a raiding party.
A raiding party?
The villagers have been increasingly defiant recently, and we wish to put a stop to any potential rebellions against the rule of the Arch Evoker. A raid helps to put them back in their place, so to speak.
Well, I'm happy to help.
Make sure they don't see you. Although I'm certain that won't be a problem, I want to send as little troops as needed to attack since there's a lot of villagers to go to.
Following the directions given to me by the general, I headed off to the village straight away. I hid in the shadows, keeping my distance as I observed, and I saw villagers planting and harvesting crops. Some were throwing things at each other, trading I think, and others were just wandering around and nodding at each other. Nothing really much to report, so I headed back to the base with the information for the general. On the morning of day 6, I overheard a group of Illagers speaking about me, called me strange, and said I didn't belong here, thinking I was too unusual and creepy looking to be around them. I was cheered up when I joined a group listening to the Illager chef talking about an amazing daring escape he had made from a prison deep in the nether when he went there to collect mushrooms. He told us about how he used a bed to blow up his cell and fought his way to freedom through armored piglins with just his spatula. After that epic tale, I overheard some royal guards talking about wanting to spar against each other in a training ring that sounded pretty interesting. And then I went to give the general my report on the village, but he looked really busy, so I gave my notes to one of his guards. For day 7, I wanted to practice my fighting skills, so I went to speak with several different Illagers, but every one of them ignored me or refused to train with me. So I took it into my own hand and went to a training ring by myself, summoned an illusion, and sparred with my illusion for the day. Now better equipped and practiced, I spent days 8 and 9 exploring the nearby hills trying to track down the Redstone Golem, but I eventually got lost and arrived at an outpost at the foot of a giant mountain. I spied on a large group of Mountaineers, similar to the ones that I had escaped from before, as they patrolled around the outskirts of a formidable looking fortress, always on alert, as if anticipating an attack. Being all by myself, I decided to head back to the mansion. On the morning of day 10, I saw 2 Pillager captains talking with one another away from the other villagers. When they noticed me, they nodded for me to approach them.
So you're the illusioner we've heard everyone talking about.
Is that good or bad?
Most likely bad from the Illagers, but the general speaks highly of you.
And the Arch Evoker is very excited to have you here.
Are we going to ask him?
Ask me what?
Remember that village you scouted out the other day?
We've been tasked with doing a mini raid of sorts on the villagers there.
You want to join us? us?
I've never been on a raid before.
Don't worry about that. It's easy. We just show the villagers.
We show them who's boss around here. And if you find something useful on the way,
Then you can help yourself do it.
Well, yeah, sure, I'll come along.
great. Can't wait to put your cool magic to use.
Nice. If you're ready, then let's head off.
The rest of day 10 was spent with me distracting the villager guards with my illusion running around as the pillager captains went in, broke doors, smashed chests, and chased the villagers around. I went in while my illusion did its work and grabbed some food and some other resources. Then we regrouped as the village was in chaos with my illusion providing us an easy exit distraction. While out and about with the pillager captains on days 11 through 12, we split up the loot we had obtained and fought off a few attacks of Mountaineers that were wandering the area. They apparently defied the rule of the Arch Evoker, but with their leader now defeated, there's only a remnant of rebels left who still want to rule. They also mentioned to me that they had another adventure lined up and asked me if I was interested in joining them on their escapades. We took the scenic route home and ended up sneaking into some abandoned mine shafts and taking whatever treasure we could find, then camped there on the night of day 12. We returned to the mansion on the night of day 13, reporting back to the general that the raid was a success and that the villagers shouldn't be as rebellious for a while. Then the general wanted me to update him on my progress in hunting down the Redstone Golem. I told him that I had lost the trail as I headed near the mountains, where I found some Mountaineers at a cool looking outpost. The general pondered for a moment and then told me that I may have returned to the Redstone mines, as they were in the same direction as the mountains. He also began to mention a Mountaineer rebellion, but walked off, though I left to find a place to unload my loot and went to bed. On days 14 and 15, I traveled back to the mountains and arrived at the Redstone mines to see piles of collected redstone, blocks of magma, and weird blue glowing crystals peppered around the place, the same ones from the prison. I followed this trail inside and entered a giant chamber where the Redstone Golem sat dormant in the center on a platform, surrounded by more redstone, magma blocks, and those eerie crystals. I slowly approached, not wanting to provoke it just yet. Then a flash of red light blasted out, and that's when I noticed a goat and axolotl standing by the golem with a floating staff. But my attention was quickly torn to the Redstone Golem, or should I say monstrosity, that was now waking up. The crystals, magma, and redstone blocks were all absorbed by this monstrosity, and I quickly threw up my hands and ran out of there, leaving an illusion copy of myself behind to distract the attacks from the creature. I returned to the Illager mansion on day 16 and told the general about the Redstone Golem, and now that it had been empowered and transformed somehow. He was really confused how a goat managed to steal the staff and help a golem escape prison, but he cared more about stopping the now monstrosity and directed me to the prison to speak with the warden for advice about fighting redstone mobs. The warden was very concerned when I told him about what happened, and he said I should upgrade my gear and craft up a lot of healing potions if I wanted any hope in being able to defeat it. So the Illager cleric showed me how to make those potions. Now I just needed the ingredients. The next day, I was practicing my magic, creating an illusion of myself and trying to make it do different things. And that evening, I was interrupted by the Illager chef, and he told me that he needed my help to retrieve his trusted pan from the nether. He showed me where the Arch Evoker's nether portal was and then headed off back to the kitchen. He couldn't just use any pan, as this had been handed down to him from his father and could add that extra kick to the dishes that he made. Without it, he was lost. I agreed to help him because he said he'd help me get the ingredients for the potions I need. Days 18 through 20, I spent journeying through the nether, and in my travels, I saw a goat running off in the distance past a group of piglins. Could it be the same goat as before? I ignored it for now and followed the chef's directions. I stealthily retraced his steps until I found that prison he spoke of before. I figured before trying to sneak into the prison, I should scout around the area to look for the pan. I found what looked to be a piglin merchant cooking with the chef's pan over a fire for a few other piglins, so I used my magic and summoned a copy of myself next to the fire. The merchant dropped the pan and ran quickly away, followed by the piglins. I retrieved the pan and headed back to the mansion to give the Illager chef back his heirloom, and that's when he rewarded me a bow with arrows for me to use in my missions, as well as told me the location of a nether fortress. On day 21, before I headed back into the nether for the nether wart and blaze rods for health potions, the Illager chef told me to make sure that I would replant some of the harvested nether wart just to ensure that I didn't anger the residents. I thanked him and went into the portal, quickly finding the nether fortress. I retrieved several stacks of nether wart while my illusion kept watch for any guards. Then we fought some blaze for rods before making our escape. Toward the end of day 22, I returned to the mansion, still needing to figure out where to get watermelon from. I dove into the local mines on day 23 through 25, mining for as much gold as I could find. I didn't get incredibly lucky, but I did find some good veins. However, during my mining trip, I noticed some caves had quite a bit of redstone. Strange. I quickly disregarded it though when I found diamonds. The two pillagers approached me again on day 26, and they wanted a bit of adventure, asking me to join them in causing more mischief in another village because I did so well last time. I joined them, and this time they attacked and drew away the villager guards while I went in. My illusion and I corralled the other villagers into a pen pen and went to loot their stuff. The pillager captains must have known I needed watermelon for health potions because the village had a good stash. Then I met back up with the captains and we headed on home. The majority of day 27 was spent at the cleric Illager's brewing stand, creating some health potions that apparently I would desperately need in the fight to come, along with some extra to share with the other Illagers in hopes of getting on their good side. Day 28, the general approached me with another mission and 2 Vindicators following him.
Welcome back.
I'm one step closer to being ready to face the Redstone Monstrosity.
Good to hear. But as I'm sure you're aware by now, the Mountaineers are still a thorn on our side. We can't deal with the villagers if the Mountaineers are causing mischief too.
Yeah, I've run into them a couple times.
We need to make sure they don't become too confident in attacking us. So we're gonna retake one of our outposts back from them and show them the folly in their ways.
That doesn't sound like much of a stealthy operation.
You can still use your natural gifts, but you'll also be leading these 2 Illagers into battle. A leadership test, so to speak.
I'm not sure I'm the leader type.
Don't worry, true leaders aren't born. They're made. Your mission is to take back our outpost at the edge of the forest. A group of pillagers will meet you there. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Good. The Arch Evoker has high expectations for you. I'm sure you'll live up to them. Now get going.
The 2 Illagers and I traveled through the forest toward our outpost. They didn't seem too keen on following me, but they were not about to disobey orders. When we arrived, the pillagers were scouting out the tower, anxious for a fight. I sent the Vindicators into attack along with my illusion, while the pillagers and I shot at the Mountaineers. We definitely caught them off guard and managed to quickly defeat everyone outside. The Mountaineers were no match against the Vindicators in close quarter combat, and with the outpost secure, the Vindicators and I left the pillagers there to report back to the general.
I'm very impressed. Nice. You seem to adapt easily to any situation.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve.
Now, I have another more important task for you, but I will divulge this information at a later date. For now, rest up and I'll speak with you tomorrow.
I headed back to the library to sleep as I felt more comfortable surrounded by books than I did the Illager folk. On the morning of day 30, the general quickly stopped by and told me that the next major mission would be more dangerous and that I should improve my equipment in order to succeed. So I went deeper into the mines, mining diamond after diamond until I had enough diamonds to craft a full set of diamond gear, which I covered up again with my magic. For day 34 and 35, I was tasked to take over the large Mountaineer outpost I found close to the mountain. The general gave me command over a larger group of villagers and one of the Ravagers. We charged into battle to take on all the Mountaineers at once. The general thought the outpost would act as a good foothold in the region, allowing us to extend our influence to the northern villagers, as well as thwart the hopes of the remaining Mountaineer forces too. Once we broke through the gate, we cleared out the last of the Mountaineers inside and left a pillager party there to defend it. Day 36 was spent gathering more food for myself, as well as different ingredients for the Illager chef as he was cooking a giant feast for an upcoming Illager celebration. The next day, the general tasked me with the construction of a wizard's tower for the Arch Evoker. The build required me to jump back into the nether to gather basalt, blackstone, as well as plenty of crimson wood, leading me to some pretty intense moments of anger from nearby piglins for destroying their home. I also needed nether brick, which I succeeded in getting after stealthily stealing some of the pillars holding up a nether fortress, while hoping the whole thing wouldn't fall over. While relinquishing the pillars of their valuable resources, saw a piglin in the distance decked out with fiery spiky armor, and it was collecting some blue crystals, very similar in fact to the ones I had seen in the redstone mines. I returned home at the end of day 38 and spent the last bit of that night and the next 2 days in building up the wizard's tower. But before construction was completed, I would need to create a central chamber for enchanting the Illager's weapons and armor. I put the build on pause as I would need to come up with a plan on getting the resources to finish that room. Early on day 41, commotion broke out in the mansion. I saw several villagers rushing out the front door, so I followed them to a huge battle against villagers. I summoned my illusion copy again, and we aided my brethren from a distance with my trusty bow and arrows. The attack must have been a retaliation from what the pillager captains and I had done. Our reinforcements helped push back the villagers though, causing their remaining troops to retreat as dusk drew near. So some of our forces set up a temporary campsite to guard our forest, and the rest of our troops headed back to the mansion. As the sun peaked over the horizon on day 42, I returned back home from the encampment, and the pillager captains approached me again, excitedly jumping in the air like rabbits. They thanked me for not saying anything about their extra raid, and shared some water breathing potions with me, saying they'd come in handy later. Before they ran off, they turned around and told me I'm not as weird as everyone says I am. After that weird encounter, I wanted to borrow a horse, quickly travel back to the redstone mines, and face the redstone monstrosity. So I went on over to the warden's house because the general told me he had a horse that I could probably use. It was a quaint little home tucked away in a nearby birch forest, and the warden was happy to help in whatever way possible to finish off the last of the redstone army. Apparently there were more, so I took his horse and rode quickly to the redstone mines, only to find an empty cavern. So I headed back to the mansion, a little disappointed but also slightly highly relieved. The general approached me again on day 43, this time with the more dangerous task I needed armor for. And the redstone golem escaped. He knocked over a cage that held a wandering hero. That hero was spotted and followed by a pillager out on patrol, leading him to the secret tavern, the Wandering Heroes Guild. Rumor has it, these wandering heroes re-emerged from the shadows to defeat the Mountaineers leader, the Illager. The general took a while to tell me about the guild and how they were tough adversaries, not to be underestimated, before sending me off with the pillager scout toward the tavern. The Arch Evoker thought he eliminated all these adventurers and had the last one in prison, but with a handful of heroes left and their secret base now found, it was my mission to burn down their tavern. We arrived at the tavern on day 44, and I sent the pillager back home to ensure his safety. For the first time, I tried to summon 2 copies of myself, but the second illusion didn't fully appear, so I sent my one helper to go release their llamas as a distraction while I set their tavern ablaze. They quickly defeated my illusion and began to chase me. I started to run toward their bridge, arms flailing, when I noticed a boat below, so I jumped over the ledge, stealing their boat and sailing to safety. Hopefully, with their tavern gone, they'll disperse and leave behind their heroic ways. I reported back to the general on the night of day 45, and he was very pleased, now knowing why the Arch Evoker had chosen to summon me. I also was told to finish the wizard's tower soon, so our evokers could get to enchanting weapons for our troops. For days 46 and 47, since the battles were getting more fierce, I tried to work on improving my illusion magic, and I thought I'd try some new things. I successfully was able to conjure a bigger version of myself this time. Then, feeling more confident, I slowed down and tried to focus on summoning 2 copies of myself at once. At first not succeeding, but then with a deep breath, I was finally able to do it, before it quickly faded away. The second time though was a lot easier, and soon I could easily conjure 2 illusions to fight for me, and I got pretty good at controlling them. Most of the other Illagers were a bit terrified of my abilities, but near the end of day 47, I noticed the warden watching me while my illusions sparred each other. He asked me what exactly happened when the redstone golem became the monstrosity. I told him what happened, and he nodded and said thought as much before heading off, not saying another word. A very peculiar guy. Day 48, I asked around for advice on how to make an enchantment table, and one of the Vindicators I led into battle told me I needed to get a book, couple diamonds, and some obsidian. He led me down into a cave and said to look for lava pools because they have diamonds nearby and I could pour water over lava to get obsidian. He threw me a spare bucket and I spent the rest of that day collecting diamonds and a lot of obsidian. I just needed books to craft all the bookshelves I would need, so I spent the next few days traveling to some of the villages nearby, using my illusions to distract the guards so I could steal the books from their libraries. I also took the opportunity to steal some food from them because I was starting to run low again. On my way back on day 53, I got lost and stumbled upon a strange redstone tower with energy shooting up into a giant crystal. I had never seen anything like it before, so I tried to sneak in to investigate, and the power emitted from the ground all the way up through the tower. It made a humming noise, so I was afraid to touch it. I followed the current of energy to the dome connected to the tower where the redstone monstrosity sat dormant, and the goat and axolotl from before stood off to the side. Then all of a sudden, the goat spat out an arrow, awaking the redstone monstrosity. So I jumped down and ran at the monstrosity. I was barely able to hurt it, but it definitely hurt me. Then it began to summon a horde of redstone cubes, which I was definitely not prepared for. I ran away trying to shoot at them, so I took out some blocks and built upward to escape, leaving them trapped. Then I summoned 2 illusions to focus on taking out the redstone cubes, and then I could turn my attention to the monstrosity. Since he was so big, he could reach me while I was still up top, but it was easier to evade his attacks, and the healing potions definitely came in handy. It took a long time and tireless attacks with both my bow and sword before the redstone monstrosity finally toppled over defeated, and my illusions and I cleared out the rest of the redstone cubes, and that's when I noticed the redstone monstrosity's head was the only thing to remain, so I picked it up and went to search for the goat and axolotl, but it was now night and they were probably long gone. Also, there was no more energy emitting from the tower. When I left that place, I had an eerie feeling, and I didn't feel that victorious. On day 54, I arrived home and reported the victory over the redstone monstrosity to the general.
This is fantastic news. The Arch Evoker will be very pleased.
I'm glad I'm able to help. For some reason, I don't feel like the fight's over.
Right, we now have to turn our attention to the growing threat of the Mountaineers and Villagers. It seems that our raid on them earlier didn't have the intended effect.
I mean, with the golem, he was defeated, but the place I fought him at seemed to drain him of his power. Something dark is brewing. Oh, and what's going on with the villagers?
I see. We'll stay alert on the matter. It seems that several villagers are pulling together their resources in order to gather their strength and strike back at us. And the Mountaineers are continuing to lead their mountain and they're attacking our supply lines. Well, luckily, they don't really like each other either.
What will we do?
We will continue to monitor the situation to find a suitable response. Either way, you've earned yourself a good rest. Take the rest of the day for yourself before finishing up the wizard's tower.
Understood. After talking with the general, I went to get some food from the Illager chef, and we spent a while chatting. I woke up feeling better on day 55, decided to knock out the remainder of the Wizard's Tower over the next 2 days. I finally got to build a great enchantment room with 4 different enchantment tables. I also added a place to brew potions and a place for someone to live in, which I planned to stay in until someone needed it. The Wizard's Tower turned out great, and I was excited to show it off to the evokers. The next day, I got some of the evokers to check out the tower, and they liked the enchantment room a lot, and now seem to like me a lot more too. They took some time to teach me about enchantments, but when I went to go use it, my vision went dark, and I heard whispers telling me to seek out the Elder One. When my vision returned, I saw the sun was already setting, and the evokers were gone. After enchanting my gear, I decided to go to bed and sleep off whatever just happened to me, but still wondering who the Elder One was. For days 58 and 59, the general had some smaller missions for me. The first was a group of villager guards who set up a small encampment in our forest. I led a small task force there, and we took over the camp, keeping the spoils for ourselves. Then we were tasked with pouring lava on a Mountaineer village of igloos while they were away, and there was also taking back another outpost from the Mountaineers. I could tell the morale of the other Illagers were lifted after accomplishing these missions. On day 60, I went deep into the forest as not to scare any Illagers, and practiced creating 3 illusion copies of myself. I really struggled with it as it took quite a bit of concentration and energy to conjure up and control them all. I did succeed a couple times, although only temporarily, until I noticed the goat and axolotl traveling together. I followed them for a little while, remaining unseen, saw them enter a nether portal. I tried to follow them through the nether and was successful for a while, at least until they got on some striders. The axolotl actually got in the strider's mouth for some reason, and they ditched me over the lava lake, so I just headed back home. On day 62, I spent some time in the mansion summoning multiple copies of myself and using them to distract and scare the other Illagers now. It became easier for me to conjure 3 duplicates, and also led to some pretty hilarious moments with the Illagers running away, but it probably didn't help my already lacking reputation. The Pillager captains found me again on day 63, ready for another adventure.
Still got those water breathing potions with you?
Of course he does. You do, don't you?
Yeah, I didn't get rid of them.
Great, we're going to need them where we're going.
Follow us.
I followed the Pillager captains back to the prison where we visited an imprisoned cartographer. The captains gave him some bread, and he gave us an ocean monument map.
Now we're talking.
Let's hope it's the one that the Arch Evoker wants us to go to this time.
I'm sure it will be.
The Arch Evoker wants us to go there?
Yup, now let's get out of here.
We took the boat I stole from the wandering heroes further and further out to sea until we saw the underwater temple beneath the surface of the water. One of them pulled out a trident, using it to attack the creatures that swam in the waters, distracting them while the other captain and I swam inside, chugging our water breathing potions to make sure we had plenty of time. We worked our way inside and came to the deepest central chamber. We fought the guardian, and it took quite a bit of effort and some scary moments as it bobbed around in the water and attacked us with its powerful beam, but we eventually took it down. The captain went to the back of the chamber and retrieved a special block of some kind, stating that it's exactly what the Arch Evoker wanted. While he did that, I heard strange whispers and images of a giant blue illusioner flashed in my mind's eye. I then saw locations of a swampy temple and a dark room, but was then snapped back to reality when the captain told me we had to go. So we swam back outside, regrouped at the boat, and headed back to the mansion. We gave the Arch Evoker the special block on day 65, and we observed as he used it to summon his own undead troops. He succeeded, but his creation didn't follow his orders, and they just wandered around aimlessly. That night, he told me to take the block to the Nameless One, the king of the undead, deep in the jungle for further study. He gave me directions and his horse, sending me on my way just as the sun began to set. Day 66, I met the Nameless One as he sat on his throne atop his temple with guards surrounding him. I gave him the block and he thanked me and pressed at my initiative, traveling tirelessly through the night. I told him it wasn't a problem and that I was really happy to help. He then proceeded to give me some strange zombie flesh, telling me that it was still living and asked me if I could deliver it to a friend, as he didn't have anyone that could get it there before it expires, since his troops can't travel during the daytime. I agreed and followed his instructions, eventually coming across hive-looking structures and bees buzzing around everywhere. I cautiously entered and was called from above.
Hello there, stranger. What's an Illager doing around these parts?
I'm here to deliver some zombie flesh.
Ah, from the Nameless One. That Scullaboy is such a honey sweet dear sometimes.
Yeah, here you go. What's it for?
It is needed for one of my top secret experiments, so be sure to give him my thanks when you see him.
Will do.
It is much appreciated. By the way, I love your beautiful robes. Bee puns are the best.
Thank you?
My pleasure. Now, if it's not too rude, I've got to head off and conduct more experiments. Progress doesn't happen by itself, you know. Feel free to stay here for the evening, as it is growing quite late now. Bye-bye!
I think I'll take you up on that offer. That night, I slept in the honey fields behind the bee castle under the starry sky. The next day, I returned home to find the outer walls of the mansion had been attacked, leaving a giant hole in our defenses. I asked around as to what had happened, but no one was really sure as to what had happened as it occurred in the middle of the night. So I took the initiative to patch it up and then made my way back to the wizard's tower to rest. I decided to go exploring on day 68 and came across some ruins where a large golem laid down. I snuck past him and carefully avoided a trap, making my way over to a large chest, and inside the chest was something called a ghost cloak. I grabbed it, not knowing what it could do, and turned around to find the large golem standing behind me.
Hey, put that back.
Oh, you scared me.
That doesn't belong to you. You have no idea what you're doing.
It was just sitting in this chest, and I thought this place was abandoned.
And that instantly gives you or anyone else the right to take something?
You
Illagers are all alike.
He hit me, so I jumped back and tried to use the ghost cloak. Then he couldn't hurt me, and I ran right through him. Now that's a neat trick. I ran away from the ruins, leaving behind an illusion for him to defeat. But as I headed home, thought about how the illusion would not have dropped the cloak I took, but maybe he wouldn't notice. On day 69, I went to steal more food from a village, using the cloak to avoid combat while my illusions caused the mischief. And on day 70, the general gave me the quest finding out who or what attacked the mansion. The next couple days, I investigated around the nearby lands, this time remaining stealthy to avoid unnecessary disruptions, and eventually found an altar with a soul campfire on top. Redstone blocks surrounded it in a strange pattern, and I heard explosions off in the distance in the direction of the redstone mines. I went to see what had made those noises, but upon my arrival, I found nothing out of the ordinary, except some more redstone that seemed to spread like a virus of sorts. And when I left to return home, I was attacked by villager guards that must have been traversing the forest. I quickly used my illusions, bow and arrow, and my ghost cloak and defeated them with ease. But just before heading home, I saw two wandering traders in the distance watching but not attacking. I still quickly fled. On day 73, instead of returning home, I had a weird desire to find one of those locations that had been shown to me by the Elder One. I felt drawn to a shabby stone temple in the middle of a swamp. It appeared to be long abandoned. The only life nearby were creepers and zombies stumbling around. Well, I snuck inside and found nothing apart from some broken stone statues and an old chest containing void mantle robes. I quickly put them on and instantly felt connection to the great beyond, now being able to easily summon more illusions of myself. Not noticing how far I traveled, it took days 74 through 76 for me to find my way back home, as I got lost 2 different times, and I also stopped a few times to observe the zombies, skeletons, and creepers I came in contact with. A few of them I saw had become affected by the redstone. I even saw some of the creatures attack a small group of villager guards, defeating them with ease, like the redstone dust gave them special powers. At the start of day 77, the general tasked me with fighting off a large group of mountaineers near Jagged Peak Mountain. They were defeating Illager scouts sent out that way, which stopped communications with our distant outposts. I selected a small team of Illagers to take with me, and we took a couple days to travel out there, camping a couple times due to the harsh snowstorms. The mountaineers would obviously have the upper hand with the storm raging, but we were determined to win. We arrived to the outpost to see the mountaineer forces had set up some camps around it. I directed my Illagers to attack in 2 different groups, flanking from both sides. My illusionary copies and I charged up the middle. This tactic worked out brilliantly. We defeated the mountaineers with ease. We all looted and pillaged the camp before we headed off home to report to the general. He was very pleased that we had succeeded, but was a little frustrated having to fight on 2 fronts with the villagers too, as we only had so many forces to spare. On day 80, I decided to rest up and focus on preparing myself for any more missions to come. I brewed some more healing potions, got some cooked food made by the Illager chef, and then got the blacksmith to make me a new sword per the general's orders. Then I spent that night meditating with my void mantle robes on, strengthening my connection to the void, and making it even easier to summon a strong force of illusions. Day 81, I was sent out to patrol the surrounding areas like a pillager party. That afternoon, I was followed by that strange golem from before, and he confronted me again.
Are you going to return what you took?
Okay, if it's that important to you, I'll return it.
What is your purpose in this land?
My purpose?
The reason for your being here. You do not look like a native to these lands.
I'm from elsewhere, and my purpose? I'm not sure what you mean.
Let me rephrase it. What missions do you have?
Defending against the villager threat, defeating the Mountaineers.
The Mountaineers?
Yes.
Perhaps this could be advantageous to both of our causes then. I will let you keep the ghost cloak if you promise to continue your fight against the Mountaineers. They enslaved my people and forced us to fight their wars.
We have a deal then.
I guess all Illagers are not alike. like.
The golem left and I went back to scouting out the area. The next day, I headed off to spy on other nearby villages, and I saw one villager with emerald armor who seemed to be going from village to village training the locals. I watched them from a distance and they seemed to be pretty organized than before. I was planning to continue to follow the special villager back to his base, but then I had another dreamlike episode where the Elder One appeared, along with a picture of a dark cave. I began following the whispers far away, dodging any groups of enemies that I saw in case my vision became blurred again. I eventually arrived to a cave entrance, pulled out a torch, and reluctantly entered it. Deep in the cave, I found statues of many different beings, all looking toward a strange chest. I cautiously opened it, finding a void mantle hood, along with an obsidian sword and an enchanted bow. I adorned the hood and felt that same rush, that same connection to the great beyond as before. I quickly returned to the surface, and with a surge of power, I summoned a huge illusion of myself. My power felt like it was growing exponentially as I traveled back on home. Over the next 3 days, the villagers mounted several attacks. They tried to take over different outposts and push their way toward the mansion.
Why are they growing so aggressive?
They've never been like this before?
Not for a long time. Something is causing them to become more confident.
What does the Arch Evoker think?
We need to discuss it in depth, but it's one of the many reasons that he has summoned you to our aid. You can definitely do some things in ways that our forces cannot.
Let me know how I can help.
I'm confident we'll claim victory. Just keep working on improving your illusion skills for now.
I traveled to one outpost we heard would be the next target and began summoning several copies of myself to defend it. Surprisingly, as dusk settled on the land, Mountaineers attacked instead of villagers. With the combined efforts of the Pillagers and my illusions, we did manage to prevail. It seemed like villagers and Mountaineers were working together, but this was not the case. Because as I was returning to the mansion, I stumbled upon a huge skirmish. Villagers had marched against our Illager forces, and in what seemed to be their last major hurrah, the Mountaineers joined the fray, attacking both sides. Many soldiers were lost during this battle. It got to a point where every side was so fatigued from battle that the remnant of those left retreated from whence they came. I didn't know if this would be the last of the fighting, but for now the resistance seemed to be quelled. After taking some time to rest, the Pillager captains and I were tasked to deliver supplies to our surrounding outposts over the next few days. We brought fresh food, medical supplies, and troops to each outpost, bolstering our defenses and preventing the mansion from being attacked. During the nights, I summoned some illusions to keep watch while everyone rested. We did run into a few stray Mountaineers that put up a fight, but most of the time it was a fairly smooth journey. Although on our way home, we passed by the Redstone Tower from before. The Pillager captains wanted to check it out, and while they were doing that, I noticed the giant floating crystal was missing from atop the tower. We didn't think it was that important, but I'll tell you now, we were so very wrong. On the morning of day 91, the general officially announced the feast to be taking place in 3 nights' time. He directed everyone to be vigilant and to work together to prevent any further attacks against the mansion leading up to the gathering. For the rest of day 91 through 92, I assisted the Illager chef in gathering ingredients for the feast, as well as helping the general in collecting some more wood and iron for the crafting of tables and chairs. We took some time to set up the room for the feast, while the general told me the feast was meant to be a booster for the morale of our troops and to see if they could get help from the Nameless One and his undead forces in preventing more rebellion. On day 93, while we were setting up the last of the decorations, a scout returned from the nether portal within the mansion. He reported that the usurped Piglin King has emerged from hiding, wearing strange new armor. The scout caught him talking to a goat and axolotl at a giant forge. They seemed to be making a huge golem out of nether blocks, empowering him with a giant red crystal. The Arch Evoker took me aside and tasked me with going into the nether by myself to defeat it, as he couldn't risk sending his army and causing an outright war with the piglins. He said no golem could be good news, as he threw me a couple potions, but that mission would have to wait until the next day because we needed this feast to go well first. That evening, the Nameless One arrived for the feast and all the Illagers gathered to celebrate the achievements of what they had accomplished so far. The Nameless One and the Arch Evoker invited me and the general to sit with them. The Nameless One was really impressed by my achievements in such little time, and the Arch Evoker stressed how important I was to his plans, thinking about making me his right-hand man. The Nameless One was inspired, stating that he had his own plans for getting a right-hand man. The rest of the evening went flawlessly, and the general was glad there weren't any attacks during the time of the feast. In the morning, I met up with the scout and followed him into the nether. It took some time to travel through the treacherous terrain, leading me to the forge-like area where he had seen the netherite golem. Upon arrival, I saw this netherite monstrosity was eerily similar to the redstone one I already defeated, but it looked much more intimidating, engulfed in blue flames. I also saw the missing crystal was there too, but it was drained of energy. I told the scout to be on the lookout for any piglins, and I went in for a closer look. The stolen staff, the prison escape, the tower, all led to the creation of this monstrosity. It didn't look like anyone was around, so I summoned several copies of myself, including one giant one. Then we charged the monstrosity. I shot an arrow at it, and it quickly woke up angry. My giant illusion went to meet it in hand-to-hand combat, that, and this netherite beast packed a powerful punch as he slammed the ground, breaking the things around him and knocking his enemies into the air. My other illusions and I shot at him from a distance until my giant copy fell in battle. Then the monstrosity turned his attention to us and began to pick off my other illusions. Whenever his adversaries were too far away, he would spit explosive bits of lava out, making it difficult to outmaneuver him. I tried to run into attack, but I could barely land any hits before being launched into the air. I had to summon in more illusions to help, and I felt both my health and my magic feeling drained. When I finally got his health low enough though, I ran in for the final blow. He let out a powerful roar before falling backward defeated. Then he crumbled into a really cool hammer. After the battle, I was heading back to where the scout was, and he was fighting off a group of piglins. I tried to rush to his aid, but it was too late. So I got my revenge on the bunch that knew we were here, and then hid before the reinforcements saw me. I spent the next couple days spying on the piglins to see why exactly they wanted to summon such a tough creature. They were really shocked to find their netherite monstrosity missing. They left to inform their king, so I tailed them. It's really hard to try to keep up with piglins while staying out of sight. Eventually, we found the king collecting those blue crystals. He was exactly like the scout described and was not happy to hear his creation was missing. He yelled at them and said he will regain control of the nether at any cost. Then he left, striding off on his own. I tried to follow him, but the amount of piglins made it impossible to remain undetected. So I spent day 98 traveling back to the nether portal to report everything. Curious who overthrew the piglin king. On the evening of day 99, I finally returned to the mansion and was sent to the roof to be greeted by the Arch Evoker, General, and Warden, who were waiting for my return.
See, I told you you'd make it. Hey, I knew you'd make it out. Tell us everything.
I informed them of what had occurred in the nether and confirmed that the piglin king has indeed returned, as well as told them about his apparent plans for the nether. The Warden and General were impressed, giving me a nod before heading off. The Arch Evoker was most pleased and made me his right-hand man, putting me in charge of the wizard's tower I had built, as well as all of his mages. On day 100, I stood atop my new home, which towered over the forest and beyond, wondering what my place in the world would shape out to be. I also continued to hear faint whispers from the Elder One, who I sensed was also pleased with me. And that's how I survived 100 days as an illusioner. Thanks to X Nestorio, Forest Bono, Painful, Swidge, and Glitzcore for helping me make this video. After defeating the rest of my patrol party, these YouTubers chased me to a dungeon where unstable magic resides. Once they cornered me, a rift opened up. I felt something on the other side entrance me and pull us through, ending up in a new universe at a fortified Illager mansion. Will I be able to move up the ranks here and defeat the humans? Watch to the end to find out. This is 100 days as the Arch-Illager in hardcore Minecraft. On day 1, I ran toward the Illagers hoping they were friendly. Fortunately, they were, and promptly chased off the humans who followed me through the makeshift portal that abruptly closed. With nothing to really go back to anyway, I went with the Illagers to make a new home at this epic fortress of a mansion. While they were allies, friendly probably isn't the best way to describe them. They made fun of me for being short and weird looking, but quickly fell into line when their leader approached. Their Arch Evoker got in my face and interrogated me about the humans. I told him what little I knew and how we just got here by accident. He said the humans in this world have been long extinct, and told his general to get me situated in their ranks.
Welcome! So you're the one that brought the humans here.
Yeah, sorry about that. They were chasing me and then...
It's alright. We'll hunt them down in due time. For now, let's get you some food.
Thank you. I haven't eaten anything in days.
Sorry, we just have some stale bread from the last raid. Our chef is away on a mission. When he gets back though, make sure you try his cooking. Best in the kingdom.
I'll be sure to. After that, the general gave me a tour of the mansion. We stopped at the blacksmith so I could get a weapon, but everything was too heavy for me, so all I got was a dagger. Then I was brought to the roof to test my might. The other Illagers just laughed at me as I ran away from every opponent, but the general was determined to find me something to fight with. I couldn't handle any weapon well. That night, we finished the tour in the library, and I met an interesting creation of the Arch Evoker.
A bit scary, is it?
Whoa, what is that?
I'm the Arch Evoker's Vex, and that was the Redstone Monstrosity.
And where did it come from?
Originally another universe like you, just as a golem, but then it turned into that. A powerful foe once feared by all Illagers.
Feared, huh?
But gone now, just like the one in the nether. You can sleep soundly now.
And that I did. I was exhausted after the day I had. Bright and early on day 2, I went to the tallest roof to see my new surrounding lands and found another of the Arch Evoker's creations. I thought I was going to become its next snack until...
Hello, little one.
You can talk?
I'm not the average Ravager. I'm smart enough to see something's bothering you.
I can't find my place. I just don't feel cut out to be an Illager. I mean, I can't even handle a weapon.
I see. Look over there. That tower was built by an outcast, and it's now where all the evokers train with magic. You should try there.
Magic? Oh, thank you. I quickly reported to the general and requested we go to the tower. Apparently, the illusioner who constructed the tower was away on a special mission fighting a slime witch, and brought our chef along too. Anyway, upon arrival, we found the Arch-Ivoker and his underlings were working away on portal magic to teleport like Endermen, but things were not going going too well so far. The evokers didn't want to waste their time with me, so they just threw me a starter wand. Then the general showed me a nearby place to test it out, and I actually did pretty good for once. Nearby was the prison we went to after, and I was told more about how a redstone witch brought giant golems to invade here. That's when the warden of the prison, the one to stop the invasion, came out to greet us and said they still find redstone stragglers from time to time. As we headed back to the mansion, the general warned me there was a lot of hostile creatures to watch out for in these lands. Days 3 and 4, I was thrown into real combat to gain some experience. A nearby village was causing trouble and making weapons, when they should have just been relying on Illagers for protection. To prevent another rebellion, I went with an unwelcoming raiding party to remind them who's in charge. However, these villagers put up a really good fight, and I, well, did not. I was quickly overwhelmed. At least that is until I switched to using magic and got some reinforcements. I also tried creating a magical shield, but I guess it only works against magic. Then I had a little too much fun playing with fire. There is something so beautiful about watching the flames consume a household. Anyway, when we got back on day 5, I had to earn my keep like all the other new recruits. The horses were not too fond of me, but it was still a whole lot better than doing bath time for the Ravagers. These ones actually did try to eat me. No one told me I was supposed to feed them first. The next day involved lots of training. After doing so much running and jumping, I was forced to spar with bigger Illagers, including that royal guard I shot before, and he did not go easy on me. Then the evokers casted a temporary armor spell on me for a mission. It was only after all that I was allowed to train with magic. Day 7, I was relieved to get assigned the Illager cleric. My mission was just to deliver some potions to the swamp, but whatever potions I had must have smelled good to the slime cubes. After fending them off, I made it to the witch hut and gave them their delivery, surprised to receive a health potion and some food in return for my service. Then headed back to the mansion the next day. On day 9, I was determined to move up the ranks to get out of doing chores, so I convinced the general to send me out with a patrol party. He reluctantly agreed, but only because a human was spotted near the desert. Since I kind of led them here, he thought it fitting I helped stop them from causing any more trouble. We arrived that evening, finding no sign of any humans, so we set up camp for the night. The next morning, we split up and patrolled the area. That's when I stumbled upon one of those humans messing with some cobblestone. She quickly disappeared, and the cobblestone turned out to be a golem. I froze up, but an arrow flew by me and struck it down. I turned to see the human slay a pillager with a single swing of her hammer. Then she ran off with a nearby crate and grindstone as more help arrived. With the humans armed and new golems being created, we had to rush back to report these findings to the general. Day 11, the general acknowledged the humans must be planning something, and with spies being chased off from here in the past, the general thought it wise to set up some new defenses in the forest around the mansion, along with nightly patrols to stay vigilant. Then we expanded our defenses out toward the desert. A Vindicator and I were sent to clear out an abandoned pillager outpost that was overrun with a spider infestation. I felt like I was getting a little better at fighting until I got to the top and found a poisonous spider whose bite was very lethal. But eventually, we had the outpost up and running. On day 14, after getting some more food from storage, I brought all the string we got from the spiders to the blacksmith. He was fairly impressed and let me help craft some more crossbows for the patrol party set to go search for the missing humans and golems. But he failed to mention they were all in a briefing, so I awkwardly delivered their weapons as they all stared at me a bit irritated. The following day, some of the other pillagers that didn't get to go still wanted some adventure and a challenge. Unfortunately for me, that meant carrying their things through the nether. They wanted to go hunt some hoglins, despite the Arch Evoker's command to stay out of the nether. Apparently, there are piglin variants at war here, and he does not want us to get pulled into it. We did manage to sneak past the fighting and find a hoglin, but their arrows just seemed to make it mad. Then I found out why they really brought me along. Not to befriend me, but because they could outrun me. I quickly began bridging up, now trapped by the hoglin. So I pulled out my wand, and it began shooting out a new ray attack. That actually turned out to be too much for the hoglin. Then it was time to give the pillagers a piece of my mind. But before I could, they fell at the hands of some ender piglins. I ran as fast as I could to get out of the nether, and decided not to mention anything to anyone about what just happened. Sunrise the next day, the Arch Evoker found me. I thought I was going to be in so much trouble, but he didn't seem to know about the nether trip. Instead, I was tasked to warn the undead kingdom of the humans' arrival and the rise of the new golems. I was also supposed to ask about a necromancer staff. Anyway, I had to traverse through a thick jungle and eventually arrived at a beautiful temple. At the top, I interrupted a meeting with the Nameless One, his generals, and a drowned leader as they were negotiating a treaty. I told them about the rising threats and asked about the staff. The Nameless One took me inside and said the Arch Evoker would need a lot more powerful staff to allow him to raise Illagers from the dead. He gave me a few different staffs to bring home as I contemplated what I just heard. Then I headed out the next morning, and when I got back, the Arch Evoker became furious with me upon just relaying the message and returning his staffs. So on day 18, he put me on guard duty as punishment even though I was just the messenger. And of course, I got in trouble for talking to the prisoners. I felt like I couldn't get anything right, and most of the Illagers still did not like me. I just wanted to be cool and respected like them, a couple of pillager captains that are always out doing raids. raids. Hey, could I go with you guys on your next raid?
I don't know. You honestly don't seem like you could put up much of a fight. Aw, come on. It could be funny. I heard there's a witch involved this time. The boss wants us to take this seriously.
You're right. Are you any good with magic?
Better than I am with a weapon.
All right, I guess you can come. We've only seen something like this once before, so stay close.
With that ominous warning, we are en route to another village, and I had no idea what I had just gotten myself into. When we arrived, it was raining and kind of hard to make out what was going on. As we got closer, we began getting shot at by other Illagers. I didn't know what to do, but the captains quickly jumped into action, knocking out our aggressors, and then they froze. That's when a pink witch came out of hiding, holding a heart medallion. Then the captains turned to face me and began to attack me. I ran for my life and tried to hide, but the witch quickly found me, but then stopped confused when her medallion didn't work on me. So I used that to my advantage and began attacking her, chasing her outside where all the Illagers were now free from her trance. One of the captains quickly dispatched her and approached.
Great job out there. We couldn't have done it without you.
I guess it can be good to be different from the rest sometimes.
Oh, thank you.
Come on, let's report back to the general.
Agreed. But first, let's loot this place.
We took whatever we wanted, and I stocked up on plenty of food. As we headed home, they told me about a jungle witch they defeated that used seeds to control the mind of a jungle abomination. But this medallion seemed to change her victims' hearts to do her bidding. On day 23, we were welcomed home with a celebration, but it was actually for the illusioner and chef who returned from stopping a potential invasion from the Slime Witch Queen and her kingdom. And afterward, the Arch Evoker thanked the captains for defeating the Pink Witch too. The only recognition I got was when they told the illusioner how I brought humans to the realm. The following day, I headed to the kitchen per the general's recommendation to cheer myself up. When I got there, the chef seemed pretty well rested and was already back to work making the best mushroom stew I've ever had. Then he told me his adventures of battling slime knights and meeting samurai mushroom people, which made me a little more hesitant to eat his stew, at least until he pulled out his nether mushroom stew, which tasted great but was a little too spicy for me. The chef said it's harder to get ingredients from the nether since the warped witch brought her piglins here, but when I asked what was with all the witches and why the Arch Evoker is so obsessed with defeating them, he said we aren't allowed to talk about it. Finally, we ended the meal with some slime spider legs that did not agree with me. Early day 25, a scout returned and said one of the patrol parties went missing near a village where all the humans were last spotted. I was commanded to go along with the raid party to finally put an end to this, but they didn't seem too happy to have me, and I was terrified to go after watching just one human in action. How are we supposed to take on 4? I let fear get the best of me and decided to borrow a teleportation device just in case. Then we all headed toward the village, toward a fierce battle. When we arrived at the village day 27, the humans were waiting, weapons in hand. As we charged toward them, villagers jumped out and ambushed us. Illagers began falling all around me. I managed to take out a couple villagers, but soon I found myself surrounded by the humans, all alone.
Hey, that's the little one that led us here.
I quickly took out the portal device and activated it. I must have done something wrong because instead of teleporting me away, 4 portals opened up and swallowed each of the humans. Both confused and kind of relieved, I watched as the villagers scattered in fear. In the chaos, I set the village ablaze and began my journey home. As I traveled back alone, I worried about what I was going to say with the raid party gone and the humans presumably now scattered. Day 30, I made it back and just decided to come clean and return the device I stole. The Arch Evoker was enraged at my theft, letting my raid party perish, and most importantly, making it that much harder to track down the humans I released into this world. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my days in a prison cell, but then he said he had something much more humiliating in store and banished me from his kingdom, never to return. The following several days, I traveled aimlessly looking for a place to rest. The Undead Kingdom did not want to strain their relationship with the Illagers, and the Pillagers said I was not welcomed at any outpost. Shunned by my kin, I wandered the land, seeking a new home. But all I found was hatred. Driven by rage against those who wronged me, I wandered blind to whatever end, until I eventually stumbled upon a mysterious cave and carefully made my way in. At long last, I found something that would change my life forever. The Orb of Dominance. As soon as I picked it up, it turned into a perfectly weighted staff just my size, and absorbed my medallion. I felt the power of the orb surge through my veins, but was interrupted by an imprisoned pillager in tattered clothes. He promised to show me how to use the orb if I let him out. Then he led me down to the main chamber where I passed all those dead redstone golems. Well, I thought they were dead. Turns out they sat dormant, waiting for someone to come along. I was about to run out of there when the freed pillager stopped me and showed me the power of my new staff. Suddenly, we were surrounded by 6 redstone golems that all seemed to wait for my command. I turned back to the pillager and told him to explain himself. Long ago, back when he was a captain of an outpost he had built himself, he came here in search of this power promised by an underling. But when they found the orb, he was betrayed and rendered unconscious. When he awoke, he found himself imprisoned and his underling gone. Probably now the new captain of the outpost that he had built. It sounded like vengeance was in order for both of us. We left the cave as the sun rose on day 36 and were greeted by a now armored human who had followed me here. He drew closer but stopped as the pillager came out behind me.
You brought us here and scattered us.
Surrender now if you wish to live.
I think I'll take my chances.
Okay. Once the doors were fully open, he backed away as the redstone golems surrounded us. But I felt the need to test out my new power. I ran at him and we clashed. He hit really hard, but the orb gave me more health and shielding. He was putting up a really good fight, and soon we were all turned around. Then he ran at me, tackling me off the cliff's edge. I watched as he fell to his demise, very confused with what was happening. Then I realized I could actually fly. This orb is so amazing, but I could feel it draining me the longer I flew. Better to only use it when absolutely needed. I did, however, feel my overall health increase upon the defeat of my first human, and with my powers now tested, it was time to test out my new golems. So off we went to the pillager's outpost to overthrow his betrayer. We spent the next few days traveling north to his outpost, and on the way, my new friend told me about how the orb rejected both him and his betrayer, saying there was something special about me. He seemed very glad to be on my side. Anyway, day 40, we arrived at the outpost my new friend had built, and the pillagers were forced to welcome me in, but I could tell they did not want me to stay for long. They were, however, very excited to have their old captain back from the dead, but his old patrol squad was missing. Then, when we asked to meet with the betrayer, the newest captain told us of how an evoker showed up one day and challenged him to a duel to the death. Upon the evoker's victory, he went to claim rulership over all these lands, and branded himself the Arch Evoker. I was hoping not to face him yet. That's when I explained how I was banished, and to my surprise, my new friend said he'd still stand by my side against the Arch Evoker. I forced the pillagers to give us some more food for the journey, and we went on our way. As we traveled toward the fortified mansion, I was told that if I could defeat the Arch Evoker in combat, I could assume his role as ruler over the Illager kingdom, and my new friend would be honored to serve as my right-hand man and advisor. On day 42, we arrived to the mansion and the Arch Evoker came out to meet us. He said we were not welcomed, and began going inside when I challenged him to a duel. We decided to battle it out here to avoid any destruction, and all the Illagers that could leave their duties came to watch. The Arch Evoker wasted no time, biting me with his first move before throwing me in the air with a levitation spell. That's when he realized I could fly now. I began to attack him back when he hit me with a powerful beam of magic, so I quickly countered with a beam of my own. He was definitely much stronger than me though. In a desperate last act, I pulled out the Orb of Dominance and used its new imbued power to try to turn him to my side. It didn't work, but confused him just long enough for my golems to close in and scare him. Then I hit him with one more beam, knocking him into a redstone golem. He fell down unconscious with his crown missing and now contaminated with redstone dust. According to Illager customs, to die in a duel is very honorable, but to be knocked unconscious is more disgraceful than banishment. Loser. Anyway, as I left the prison, all the Illagers watched as I approached, still in unbelief of what just happened. Then the leader of the Evokers slowly walked up and gave me a new fire wand they had been working on as a gift to welcome me as their new ruler. For my first day as the Arch-Illager, I wasted no time in looking the part and making everyone bow down before me, and I mean everyone. I don't know why the Arch Evoker put his throne room in the basement. For my first official act as ruler, I appointed my rescued pillager friend as my advisor, and ended up reuniting him with his old squad, who happened to be the highest ranking pillagers of the mansion. It was the best day of my life, but there were still some who were a little hesitant to accept my rule. That of course did not last long once I tested out my new wand. I did try to get the orb to absorb my other wands like it did the medallion, but I could not figure it out. And I was also interrupted with news of the Arch Evoker's escape with the help of his Vex and Ravager. No matter, we have other Ravagers, and I guess I could try to make my own Vex, only loyal to me. Still, I figured we should chase after them, but when the trail ran cold, I decided we should celebrate my coronation and establish my rule with some much needed raids. I was able to test out my golems and the might of my troops, all while showing the world its new ruler. Day 44, I had the general debrief me about all the regions I ruled over, who our allies were, and all the potential threats out there, as the chef served me his best dishes. He recapped the history of our kingdom and told me of all the different creatures that they have encountered. I was surprised to hear about the Mountaineers and how they gave us trouble during the Illager rebellion. Plus, that wasn't the only major Illager faction that defies my rule. The Enchanter's forces also don't serve me. But then he said that both rulers of the other factions were no longer in charge. However, power vacuums like those don't stay empty for long. Others undoubtedly took their places. I also finally found out why the Arch Evoker was so obsessed with witches. A yellow witch had turned him into an Illager, and he thanked her by kicking her into the void. That would explain his hatred for all these different witches popping up, but not why they are trying to take over this universe. To become the true ruler of this realm, I decided I needed to unite all the Illager factions, and build a proper castle from which to rule. Well, actually, force my underlings to build it for me. And fortunately for me, I now control the Illager Mining Guild, which is currently excavating the redstone mines for more resources. However, when I arrived, their leader said they ran into some issues while uncovering the deeper cave systems. I had my advisor explain we wanted to build a castle nearby while I went to go investigate. As I delved into the caverns below, I found some fallen Illagers. I slowly crept my way deeper in and discovered a remnant of redstone forces. I tried to turn them to my side like the Redstone Golems, but they still attacked me. So I quickly went on the offensive, flame wand in hand, spewing a ray of fire at these pests, and watched as they fell one by one in utter agony. Eventually, I worked my way to the main chamber and found their leader controlling the redstone mobs. This creature hit hard, so I flew up where it couldn't reach me and hit it with all my magic, until it finally perished. After that, the orb was able to take control of the remaining redstone mobs, and it took me a second to figure out what those creatures were working on. An Obsidian Golem! That night, I tasked the redstone mobs with helping the mining guild collect resources, and sent for some evokers and witches to come work on finishing the Obsidian Golem. I then spent day 47 scouring the nearby lands looking for the perfect place to build. Upon finding it, I showed the mining leader where to deliver as much deep slate as they could. When we returned to the redstone mines the next day, I found the evokers and witches did not work well together. After showing them the importance of unity, they said it would take some time to gather all the necessary materials, so off I went back to the mansion. I made it back the following day and sought out more information on the other Illager factions. While in the library, I got the idea for something much more powerful than an Obsidian Golem, and sent the Redstone Monstrosity's head to the mines for research. Then the general pointed me to the prison to learn more about the other factions. The warden left me with a Mountaineer that spoke of his leader's demise, and a white fog that the Illager would commune with, but since he was trapped in the prison, he was unaware of who the Illager's successor was. I left the prisoner behind and went to search for the warden, finding the big Vindicator at his home that evening. Turns out he was partially responsible for overthrowing the Enchanter's rule, alongside the Skulk's warden. So the next morning, I went to the cleric for some health potions, then I gathered a small party together for our warden to lead us to the Enchanter's castle, in hopes of dueling whoever led his forces now for control. On the way, he told me more about the Enchanter. One part that really stood out to me was that he tried to make his own Vex, a power only the Arch Evoker has accomplished, and sparsely lent out to the other evokers. Unfortunately, the Enchanter instead invented what he called an allay that did not want to serve Illager kind. I really liked the idea of creating my own Vex, only loyal to me. That's when I discovered the Enchanter could still be alive. I could improve upon his notes to try for myself. We quickly altered course for the Skulk Kingdom, and soon stumbled upon Skulk forces fending off another heavily armored human.
Is that all you've got? How about a real challenge?
Stop where you are and put your weapon down.
Looks like we both have some better gear.
I won't ask you again.
You want me to put it down?
I probably should have worded that better. She ran at me and swung her axe down on my head. I quickly countered, but she had a ferociousness in her eyes and relentlessly attacked me. My health was dwindling, and that's when my golem stepped in and smacked her down. It must have hit her pretty hard because she was ready to run but was stopped by the illusioner. She quickly turned and ran at me, just in time for my fire wand to spit out a huge fireball that incinerated her. As she fell, I felt my health increase even more, and with that threat dealt with, the Skulks were very happy to lead us to their fortified portal to the deep dark. Of course, we were not allowed to go in, but after my warden spoke to theirs, they surprisingly brought out the now powerless and disgraced Enchanter. He was cooperative enough to tell me where to find the notes on Vex creation that he had hidden in his castle, assuming they weren't found or destroyed. On day 54, we arrived at the Enchanter's old castle and were stopped by some guards outside their magical shield. They led us inside upon a request for an audience with their leader. As I entered the throne room, I saw the biggest Illager I've ever seen, who claimed to be the Illager King. I wasted no time in challenging his rule, but was met with laughter amongst his people. He slowly approached and said casually,
"It's your funeral. do it.
He let me make the first move, then quickly ran at me. He was the strongest opponent I'd faced so far, capable of killing me in just a few hits, and with us being inside, I could not fly away to attack from a distance. Fortunately, I was able to use my surroundings to my advantage and hit him the best I could from afar, until he had me cornered. On the brink of death, I looked around and saw an opportunity. With a few quick movements and an accurate shot toward the ceiling, the chandelier fell on the false king, crushing him. With a somewhat shameful duel complete, I went to rest on my new throne as this Illager faction pledged their allegiance to me. My first act as ruler was to take down their shield and give me the power source for the monstrosity I was creating. They wouldn't need it anymore because they were all to move to my new castle to be built. Then I scoured through the Enchanter's old room and found his hidden notes on Vex creation, along with a nether star that I figured could be useful for something. The following day, I told everyone to begin packing and be prepared to move to the castle once it's finished. Then I took a few of my new troops with me as we all headed back to the mansion, and upon return we were greeted by the general.
Welcome back, my king! It seems you have done what your predecessor could not.
Thank you. Now get these men settled in and prepare for me a group of builders.
Yes, sir. I have word from the Miners Guild. The last of the resources will be delivered soon.
Excellent. Have the builders meet me there in 3 days' time.
There's one more thing. The nameless one is waiting for you inside.
I went inside to find the undead king and his retinue of guards waiting for me. He had heard of my rise of power and wanted to see the staff that I had found. To my surprise, he made a gesture of goodwill between our kingdoms and upgraded it with a bit of his own magic, so I could now raise fallen Illagers from the dead. I also asked him how to get the orb to absorb my wands, but he told me I had to grow in my own abilities first, suggesting I make a new wand out of something more powerful than the others. As I watched them leave, I couldn't stop thinking about stealing his staff so I could rule over all the undead too. But first, I had to establish my own kingdom and improve my abilities. I went to get some more food from the chef, then asked the evokers more about summoning vexes. Turns out the Arch Evoker would only grant them the power temporarily for raids. After giving them the Enchanter's notes, we searched through the Arch Evoker's books and worked on unlocking the ability for all of us. That night, I left the evokers to continue the research and told the illusioner to craft a new wand for me. Day 59, I traveled to the Redstone mines to deliver the power source to my team working on the Obsidian Monstrosity. They had finished constructing it, and it looked so awesome. We hastily installed the power source and I waved the orb over my new creation, but it just lied there. My golems were just woken up from a deep sleep. I had no idea how we were going to bring this thing to life. I left there extremely frustrated and went straight to the build site, arriving on day 60. I spent the next several days de-stressing by bossing around all of my minions to construct my new castle. We started by adding a main entrance leading into the mountains. I had them hollow out several rooms on the inside for us to stay while we worked on the main build. And once the foundation was secure, they built high walls to protect the base. Then built a pathway leading up to some pistons that could propel you up to the main platform I had them put in to keep my monstrosity on, if we could ever get it working. I figured I could have it protect my throne room that was to be built up here. With most of the work now complete, I left them with instructions to furnish the inner halls and build the main throne room. On day 68, I returned to the mansion and was delightfully surprised to see a new form of Vex fly up to me and give me a nether star wand. The evokers were really excited to show me how to summon a Vex, and after a long day of trying, I finally had my own flying in the sky with me. It's actually a lot harder than it looks to keep a Vex on this plane of existence. Over the next few days, I had to deal with squabbles in my ranks and ration shortages, which we solved by planning more raids to the south. These villages were not raided as often, so we did face some resistance. However, it proved a useful time to test out the might of my new troops. I also tested out my own abilities, but summoning a Vex in the heat of battle proved a challenge, although I was able to raise one of my troops from the dead and force it to keep on fighting. Oh, and my new wand was able to crush any remnants of opposition, quite literally. And with the southern villages under submission, we got plenty of food to restock our storehouses. Day 73, I took some time to practice summoning a Vex and guiding it around to do my bidding. It was a lot harder than it looks, but I was slowly improving, and on day 74, I set out to check on the construction of my castle. I arrived that night to find it was finally completed. I was so excited to test out my new throne and send for the fallen Illager King's troops to come garrison the rooms below, along with any extra troops at the mansion, including my Redstone Golems. Then day 75, I returned to the Redstone mines to find little progress made on enlivening the monstrosity. That night, I went to the illusioner for answers, since he has the most experience with them. He told me of a goat and axolotl that used a stolen staff from us to free the Redstone Golem and transform it into a monstrosity. So the next day, we traveled to the Redstone Tower, where he defeated the Redstone Monstrosity, but did not find the staff or anything really of use. So we had to delve into the nether, fighting through different piglin variants over the next few days. We made sure to leave no witnesses to pull us into this war, but it significantly delayed our travels. Eventually, we made it to the forge where the nether monstrosity was made. The clunky crystal that gave it life was still there, floating in the the air. We decided the efficient power source I got from the Enchanter's magical barrier would suffice, but it was almost like we just needed to find a power switch for the Obsidian Monstrosity, some way to access its mind and activate it. On the way out of the nether, the illusioners said they last lost track of the goat and axolotl in a snowstorm heading north. Day 81, we made it back to the mansion and I grabbed some more health potions. I didn't like the idea of switching from hot to cold so fast, but I prepared a small retinue to travel north with me and made sure everyone had ample food for the long journey ahead. While we were up there, I hoped to find the leader of the Mountaineers. Before we left, the general informed me of an outpost that should be under our control by Jagged Peak Mountain if we should need a place to rest. Then we set off. It was time to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, find the stolen staff, and take over the Mountaineer faction. We spent days 82 through 85 scouting out the northern lands, looking for any signs of the goat or Mountaineers. But soon a snowstorm took over the land. We decided to set up camp in a cave for the night, but we're not alone. Easy there, big fella. Maybe we should find another cave.
Why? Is there something chasing you?
Does everything talk in these lands?
Oh, you're worried about me? Yeah, a lot of things talk here. This world is corrupted.
What do you mean?
I've been trying to figure it out for a while now. Some force out there must be behind all this chaos and probably behind how you got here.
Wait, how do you know I'm not from here? Before he could answer, a band of frozen pirates entered the cave. Then one of the Nameless One's generals walked in, returning with some food for his polar bear companion. We all sat by the fire and the stray prince told me about how a goat and axolotl kidnapped his polar bear and he got revenge by pushing them off a balcony. The morning of day 86, the stray prince pointed us toward Goat Mountain and warned us of some troublesome villagers that live nearby there. We arrived at their village near sunset and demanded them to house and feed us for the night, not wanting to waste any time raiding. I could tell their leader was not afraid, but still wanted to prevent any bloodshed. So the preceding morning, he gave us directions to Goat Mountain and where to find an ice castle the Mountaineers controlled. While he couldn't guarantee that the Mountaineer leader would be there, he did guarantee that there were dragons spotted in the area recently, no doubt heading toward Goat Mountain for a snack. It was actually not hard at all to find the mountain, and since there were dragons, we hid and sent in my Vex for recon. There were a lot of goats and axolotls up there, along with not just 1 but 2 dragons, and they all seemed to be preparing for battle. The Vex also noted that there was a waterfall under the balcony that could have saved the goat and axolotl kidnappers while they were falling. Anyway, it was time to make myself known. We revealed our presence, and I was surprised to be greeted by a yellow witch. I was told she had fallen into the void, but I do suppose that one of her dragons could have caught her. She claimed to be just peacefully raising these animals and seeking refuge from the Arch Evoker here, after accidentally turning him into an Illager. Then she handed over the staff, saying that she was not aware of how one of her goats got it. I got what I came for, so we left, but I did not trust a single word that she said. Both her and the goat faked their deaths, and have been preparing all this time in the shadows. But to what end? I'll have to send some spies to keep tabs on this mountain. Anyway, we spent 2 days traveling toward the ice castle, ready to challenge the Mountaineers leader. But on day 89, there was another snowstorm. This time we tried to push through, but were stopped by a familiar face. These humans were becoming a real thorn in my side.
Tell me, where did you send the others and how do we get home?
Let's see, 1 is missing and the other 2 fell at my hand. You'll be next if you do not surrender now.
I'd rather fall in battle than be imprisoned by an Illager.
Look around. You're outnumbered.
Am I?
Before I could respond, an arrow came out of nowhere and took out my Pillager guard. I flew straight up in the air and commanded my golem to destroy the human, while my royal guards turned to face some oncoming villagers dressed in blue robes that fought with a lot more experience than the average villager. Soon, only my golem remained standing, and it was surrounded. I quickly began launching magic at the enclosing ambush, but my redstone golem was slain and I fell from the sky. I guess the orb didn't like that. I rushed to summon my Vex, but failed. So in a last attempt effort, I summoned my fallen soldiers from the dead to cover my escape. But one of the villagers pursued, relentless in his attacks, so I crushed him with a meteorite and slipped away. It was hard for them to track me through the snowstorm, but not impossible. The night of day 90, I managed to evade my pursuers and made it to a mountain range. Totally exhausted, I decided to set up camp in a cave, but soon realized I'd stumbled upon Jagged Peak Mountain. I tried to get some rest, but had some weird dreams about the ice castle, and was awoken by a witch's cackle. Day 91, I set out to find the Pillager-controlled outpost that the general said should be nearby, but it had been overrun by Mountaineers. They must have a foothold over this region again. As I was planning my next move, I was suddenly frozen in place and slipped into unconsciousness as frost wizards approached. When I came to, I was imprisoned alongside the human who would not stop trying to find me. These so-called Frostmancers took our stuff and promised an audience with their leader, but laughed as they said only one of us would live long enough to speak with her. Day 92, as we entered this beautiful ice castle filled with Mountaineers, we were greeted by a white witch with no pupils. I got even more confused when I saw she had ice statues sculpted like villagers, but they were actually those who resisted her rule. That's when the human and I were thrown pickaxes and given a choice: fight to the death for their entertainment, or become another decoration. We both knew neither of us were really making it out of there unless we worked together. This wouldn't have been an issue if I had my staffs, but the Frostmancers who caught me off guard now had my staffs guarded. I was so done playing prisoner. I nodded to the human, quickly backed away from the fight, and tried my hardest to summon a Vex. It finally worked, assisting the humans in attacking the Frostmancers, distracting them long enough for me to grab my wands and my staff. But we were still surrounded by hordes of Mountaineers, so I waved my orb around the room, and it failed to turn them to my side, but it did unfreeze all the villagers. With everyone distracted, I chased the White Witch up the stairs, where I challenged her to a proper duel. With no hesitation, she began hurling blocks of ice at me, which I countered with a magical shield, then hit her with a few magical attacks before switching to my fire wand. As I spewed fire toward her, she summoned an ice storm above me, so I quickly moved out of the way. Then I threw a fireball at her and got up close, but she summoned a wall of ice around us and conjured another ice storm on us before I could fly out. We both broke out of the ice cage and found the Mountaineers watching in anticipation, so she began conjuring up her ultimate move. I scrambled to use my nether wand before she could use it, dousing her in bright magical flames and reducing her to ashes, leaving only her wand and the tool she used to communicate with me through the veil to corrupt my dreams as I slept in Jagged Peak Mountain. The astonished Mountaineers watched me walk away in horror. I went back downstairs and rested in my new throne, utterly exhausted. My first decree was to defrost the human. I let him get his hopes up for an escape before hitting him with a meteorite, gaining more health and regaining my strength. Now ruler of all the Illager factions, I traveled back to my castle with a handful of Mountaineers. On the way, they showed me how to access another's mind with the White Witch's artifact. And on day 97, we made it to my completed and now garrisoned castle, where I called a meeting with the leaders of all the clans under my rule to discuss how we would further expand my kingdom. But that night, I had a dream of the last human still out there. The orb must have been warning me of her impending attack. So on day 98, I headed to the Redstone mines with my dream artifact and the goat staff in hand. The Orb of Dominance applied extra power to the staff and the artifact, allowing me to access the mind of the Obsidian Monstrosity. Then something clicked. Suddenly, he towered over everything in the room, so I quickly pulled out the orb and tried to take control. With another success, day 99, I brought it back to my castle and had it protect my throne room. Then I found more troops had arrived from the other clans, so I held a feast to christen the newly established castle, where the chef made all sorts of delicious foods. That night, as I recounted my adventures to my underlings, we heard a noise when I mentioned the Yellow Witch still being alive, but there was nothing there. And on day 100, I realized our defenses were not impenetrable. I heard commotion coming from outside my throne room. As I went to investigate, I found the last human fighting viciously through my forces. I thought things would soon be over as she approached a Redstone Golem, but she proved much stronger than the others. She slowly approached me as I stood a bit taken back.
You've slain my party and stranded us here. I joined the party last, so this was the only character left.
Okay, well, it was not too long ago my patrol party fell at your hand, and I almost along with them.
I fight to protect the innocent, and all that is good.
Lol, get wrecked. As those powerful words poured out of my mouth, the Obsidian Monstrosity awoke, clashing with the last human. They both fought valiantly, but I did not want to risk losing something I worked so hard on, so I pulled out my wand and used the most powerful move so far, blasting the supposed hero into dust. And ending the fight, I felt my health grow one last time, and a burden lift from my heart as the Orb of Dominance finally absorbed all of my wands. Finally, everything was over. The factions united, the monstrosity alive, the humans gone. And that's how I survived 100 days as the Arch-Illager in hardcore Minecraft. Special thanks to Xnestorio, Gamers, Lockdown, Painful, Forest, Sword 4000, LD Shadow Lady, Skies, Fru, and a Cookie God for helping me make this video, and to you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks again!
I can't believe I'm a girl.